Hi, it's Katrina. We are obsessed with Atlantis for a reason, but what if I told you there are real life lost worlds even more mysterious than that? Imagine a thriving empire, millions of people, and advanced technology all vanishing overnight. No goodbye notes, no survivors, just silent ruins and questions that drive archaeologists crazy. Today we are going off the grid to find the civilizations that dropped off the face of the earth.
The Cave of Secrets. Nothing screams hidden ancient secrets quite like a dark, damp cave in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Come with me into the dim, dripping world of Cueva de los Tallos in Ecuador. This place, also known as the Cave of the Oil Birds, shot to international fame in the 1970s thanks to some truly outrageous claims. At the heart of the legend is Juan Moritz, an adventurer who made Indiana Jones look like an intern. In the mid-20th century, Moritz claimed he had stumbled upon a vast underground labyrinth stretching for hundreds of miles. And what did he supposedly find down there? Just your average Tuesday discoveries. Golden artifacts, hieroglyph-covered walls, advanced machinery, and an entire library made of metal books. That's right, metal books. Because apparently, ancient civilizations figured out how to print bestsellers on stainless steel even before we nailed down paperbacks. But wait, it got even weirder. Moritz also insisted he had come face to face with a hidden city beneath the earth, home to a race of tall, fair-skinned, hyper-intelligent beings. These weren't your average cave-dwelling weirdos. These guys were supposedly technologically advanced. But what were they doing hanging out underground instead of, running the world? That part remained conveniently vague. Things really took off when Swiss author Erich von Däniken, the king of ancient alien theories, got involved. He threw Moritz's claims into his 1973 book, Gold of the Gods, where he connected the cave's so-called treasures to extraterrestrial visitors. If it were up to Däniken, no ancient civilization could have built anything without a little help from ET. Things were shaping up for a huge revelation, only it was a big letdown. When actual scientists and archaeologists got around to investigating Cueva de los Tallos, they found zero evidence of golden libraries, lost cities, or alien relics. What the heck happened? Did they pack up and leave after Moritz's visit? Or was Moritz lying about what he found? Multiple expeditions, including a big one in the 1970s, backed by Ecuador and the UK, uncovered nothing to suggest an advanced civilization had ever lived in the cave. In 1976, Neil Armstrong himself, the first man on the moon, joined a mission to study the cave. It was one of the biggest and most expensive caving explorations ever launched, with a huge crew of experts. And they did find some weird stuff. Weird as in neatly cut passageways twisting down into the cave that were estimated to be more than 2,500 years old. No one found Moritz's library of metal books. At least they didn't admit to the public that they found it, but they did uncover proof that someone or something was in the cave a long time ago. The ancient spring. France, land of fine wine, cheese, and ancient Roman monster spas? Yep, archaeologists were just as surprised as you are, and they weren't expecting Medusa to crash the party. What archaeologists found near the village of Chambouret is a 1,700-year-old Roman ruin on top of a much older Neolithic sacred spring. If there's one thing that history has taught us, it's that humans have always been great at repurposing old real estate. The Romans were the original house flippers. This mysterious site contains the remains of a Roman-era pool and stone wall built around a freshwater spring. But the Romans weren't the first ones to enjoy the refreshing waters. The spring had already been sacred to people thousands of years before the Romans even showed up. Neolithic people were taking dips in the spring 6,000 years ago, and amazingly, the spring still works. The Romans, being the engineers they were, enclosed the spring with a wooden box and built a landscaped pool surrounded by a fancy arc of granite blocks. They turned the wild, frolicking pond of the ancient pagans into a paradise spa. Basically, they said, "Hold my toga, we're upgrading this puddle." But there is something dark here too, something that should have remained buried. No sacred site is complete without a little protection from evil spirits. Archaeologists found a ceramic fragment of a Medusa face. Medusa is the terrifying snake-haired lady from Greek mythology. Romans believed her image could ward off evil, which means that someone looked at this serene pool and thought, better slap a monster face on that, just in case. What sort of malicious spirits or tormented demons lurked at the pool that made the Romans feel they needed Medusa's protection? This site isn't just some random ruin, it's layers of civilizations stacked on top of one another. It went from a sacred Neolithic site to a Roman-era water sanctuary protected by a monster with snake hair, and then, after the Romans left, the whole place fell into ruin and was forgotten until now. Secret Maya rituals you shouldn't know. The Maya's love for big cats went way beyond admiration. It was a full-blown sacrificial obsession. If you thought ancient Mesoamerican civilizations just sat around inventing calendars and building cool pyramids, think again. Recent discoveries from the Maya city of Copan in Honduras revealed that wild animals were deeply woven into society, from ritual sacrifices to a bizarre prehistoric petting zoo. Since at least the first millennium, the elites of Mesoamerica used animals to show off their status. Jaguars and pumas were seen as symbols of power and were often sacrificed in elaborate rituals. According to a new study led by anthropologist Nawa Sugiyama from George Mason University, these practices were far more widespread than historians had previously thought. By practices, I mean everything from keeping large predators in captivity to trading animal pelts and meat. The Maya had a robust animal economy running despite not having traditional livestock like cows or pigs. This is a little-known aspect of Maya culture that you would probably be better off never even knowing about. A shocking discovery was made at Altar Q, a site that sounds like a secret government lab but was actually where Maya rulers proved their legitimacy. They did this by sacrificing a lot of big cats. Scientists found the remains of at least 16 jaguars, pumas, and other felines at Altar Q, as well as a collection of birds. Maya leaders weren't just ruling with an iron fist, they were ruling with a very expensive and disposable menagerie of cats and birds. Why so many cats? Because in the Maya culture, these animals represented strength, dominance, and divine power. If you wanted to be king, you sacrificed a jaguar and hoped the gods approved. The real shock came when researchers analyzed the bones and teeth of these animals using isotopic analysis. It turned out the mighty jaguars and pumas were munching on corn-fed turkeys before they died. These weren't wild jaguars at all. They were fattened on a seemingly endless supply of turkey. At least the Maya took good care of these adorable killer kittens before sacrificing them. This study also revealed that many animals were traded from other regions of Mesoamerica. These beautiful and exotic creatures were being kept, sacrificed, and worshipped, but also moved across vast distances. The Maya were involved in some ancient version of high-stakes livestock trading. For years, historians underestimated just how deeply animals were integrated into Maya society. Because the Maya didn't domesticate large livestock like cattle, people assumed they weren't keeping animals in any serious capacity. But as Sugiyama's research proved, they absolutely were. The disturbing part is how often Maya kings sacrificed these gorgeous animals just to prove something to the gods. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I wanted to give a big thank you to Kaijen and Cody Martinez for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. Scotland's Neolithic masterpiece. Giant rocks, tiny clues. A massive stone circle, perfectly aligned on a narrow stretch of land between two shimmering lakes, has been standing for over 4,000 years. No one knows why it was built. As a matter of fact, no one knows what it was used for or what secrets are buried beneath its stone pillars. Welcome to the Ring of Brodgar, one of the most spectacular prehistoric monuments in the British Isles. Whoever built this thing never intended for us to know its true purpose. Located on mainland, the largest island in Orkney, Scotland, the Ring of Brodgar is a Neolithic henge and stone circle. But unlike its more famous cousin Stonehenge or Avebury, Brodgar is almost a perfect circle, making it one of the most visually striking monuments of its kind. But what else makes it so special? It's huge. The ring measures 341 feet in diameter, making it the third largest stone circle in the British Isles. Originally, it had up to 60 stones, but sadly only 27 still stand today. Surrounding the circle is a massive ditch, a moat that was once 9.8 feet deep and 30 feet wide. Now, why would the builders of Brodgar feel the need to protect their monument with a gaping moat? Oddly enough, the Ring of Brodgar is only one piece in a much larger and more mystical puzzle. It isn't alone on mainland island. Within just 2 square miles, you'll find 2 stone circles, 4 chambered tombs, multiple standing stones, barrows, cairns, and mounds. Mainland is home to a vast prehistoric ritual landscape. But why? Orkney is pretty much the end of the line. It's the edge of Europe with nothing but cold ocean water beyond. Who turned this chilly, forsaken island into such a strange and mythical place? And when? Estimates place Brodgar's construction at between 2500 and 2000 BC. However, attempts at scientific dating have so far been inconclusive. In 2008, an excavation project aimed to uncover more about its age, but results are preliminary. In other words, maybe the stone circle is 4,500 years old. Maybe it's 10,000 years old. The dating has yet to be confirmed. And although scientists don't know the exact purpose of the Ring of Brodgar, of course there are several theories. Some say it was a religious site. Given its location among other sacred Neolithic structures, it may have been a place for ceremonies, offerings, or gatherings. Or it may have been an astronomical observatory used to track the movements of the sun, the moon, and everything else. Maybe they were just really into stargazing. In the 9th century, when Scandinavian invaders reached Orkney, they brought their own legends and religious beliefs. They called the Ring of Brodgar the Temple of the Sun. Young couples would pray inside the circle to Odin, making vows to the All-Father in what they believed were sacred temples. The Odin Stone was a sacred rock where people would clasp hands through a hole to swear oaths, at least until a farmer destroyed it in 1814. With its majestic size, perfect circular shape, and surrounding sacred landscape, the Ring of Brodgar remains one of the greatest enigmas of prehistoric Britain. Was it a ritual center, a celestial observatory, or something even more profound? A lost capital of ancient technology. So apparently, history forgot to mention the ancient civilization with power tools. Or at least that's what these perfectly drilled holes are making us wonder. Deep in the Anatolian heartland of Turkey lies the ruins of Hattusa, the once mighty capital of the Hittite Empire. But could this site hold more than just the ghosts of an empire? Could there be evidence of lost ancient high technology? Some researchers believe so, pointing to perfectly drilled holes, precision-cut stone, and possible saw marks in granite and basalt. The physical evidence suggests a level of engineering far beyond conventional historical understanding. Let's back up a bit here. You may not know Anatolia, the Hittites, or Hattusa, so let me tell you a little bit about them. For centuries, history has focused on the great civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Assyria, but there has always been a fourth superpower of the ancient Levant lurking at the edge of scholarly interest. That fourth civilization is the Hittites, a dominant force in the ancient world. They are even mentioned extensively in the Bible. With the rediscovery of Hattusa, their famed capital, scientists confirmed that the Hittites really were the other great power that scholars have overlooked. But the mystery goes even deeper. Before the Hittites arrived in Turkey in the 18th century BC, nearly 4,000 years ago, the land was home to an even older civilization. This even older culture is known as the Hatti, and their origins remain totally unknown. Hattusa is a city of impossibilities. Archaeologists have discovered perfectly circular drill holes in stone as hard as granite. These holes are randomly scattered across the site. In some areas, they are so densely packed they nearly cover entire rock surfaces. And get this, the holes, perfectly circular as if drilled using 21st century technology, are similar, if not identical, to holes found in Egypt. Coincidence? You can see these drill holes with your own eyes at sites like Abu Sir, Abu Ghurab, and Karnak. The question is how these holes were made. The precision suggests a tube drill, a tool that conventional archaeology does not attribute to ancient civilizations. Modern tube drills require high-speed rotation, diamond-tipped edges, and advanced engineering. none of which are officially recognized in the Hittite period. Beyond drill holes, researchers from Russia have documented evenly spaced saw marks on hard stone. These marks resemble those made by mechanized, high-speed saws rather than traditional hand tools. And you know what's conveniently missing from these stones? Chisel marks. It's like they skipped that chapter in Ancient Stoneworking 101. You would expect a 4,000-year-old civilization with access to stone technology to use chisels when cutting rock, but there are no chisel marks. Similar unexplained sawing techniques have been found at other ancient sites in Peru, like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo. As you can probably guess, most mainstream archaeologists dismiss the idea of lost ancient technology. Scientists attribute these precision cuts to bronze saws with sand abrasives. Alternative researchers argue that the level of precision, symmetry, and material hardness points to an unknown technology, perhaps one that was lost over time. Researchers already know the Hittites were masters of metalwork, being among the first civilizations to develop iron smelting. Could they, or the mysterious Hatti before them, have used more advanced tools than we currently recognize? Or could they have possessed superior knowledge inherited from an even earlier civilization? What do you think? Shocking family feud. The ancient Moche culture just took family drama to a whole new level. According to a mind-blowing genetic study, high-status funerals 1,500 years ago in Peru involved a rather extreme family bonding exercise. They didn't sit around playing Moche Scrabble. They sacrificed their own close relatives. While most of us argue about who gets grandma's jewelry, the Moche were out here making sure that family members joined each other in the afterlife, whether they wanted to or not. Published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, this study serves up fresh evidence of a practice so wild that even the experts had to double-check their data. Archaeologists from the University of California unearthed a shocking find at Huacacao Viejo, a pyramid-like structure where an elite woman known as Señora de Cao was laid to rest. Alongside the Señora were 5 other people, including an adolescent boy and girl who, brace yourselves, had been strangled with plant fiber ropes. Who needs a will when you can just take your relatives with you, right? At first, archaeologists assumed the sacrifices were random offerings to the gods, but the genetic analysis revealed they were related to the deceased. Señora de Cao's niece was among the victims, and one of the men buried there was the father of the sacrificed adolescent boy. Talk about awkward family reunions. Before this discovery, researchers assumed that Moche human sacrifices were strictly religious and often very public, featuring a level of gore straight out of a horror movie. But this private, exclusive family sacrifice club is totally new. Using radiocarbon dating, researchers confirmed that 5 of the individuals, including the sacrificed kids, were buried around the same time. DNA sequencing helped piece together a baffling family tree. 2 of the men in the tomb were likely Señora de Cao's brothers, and one may have been the father of the sacrificed girl. Another man, who had been buried decades earlier, could have been the grandpa of the whole clan. But why sacrifice so many people to be buried with this one woman? That's the mystery. Archaeologist Ferenc Schmitz suggested that strangulation may have been a more respectable way to go, at least by Moche standards. Sure, it's horrifying, but compared to some of their more dramatic sacrifice rituals, it was practically a mercy. I mean, would you rather be strangled or have your beating heart ripped out of your chest? Hopefully, you never have to make that decision. Harvard anthropologist Jeffrey Quilter says it's entirely possible that some of these sacrifices were less about honor and more about getting rid of inconvenient family members. Oof, that hits hard. I mean, there's always a few inconvenient family members, but even a ritual sacrifice feels a tad bit extreme. The Moche, who thrived along Peru's northern coast from 300 to 950 AD, were no strangers to human sacrifice. But this discovery is a game changer, revealing new layers of their social and religious practices. It just so happens that some of those practices would have probably been better off staying forgotten. More high-status Moche burials would need to be studied to determine if this family-based sacrifice was a common ritual or just a one-off case of extreme inheritance planning. Strange ancient objects. Archaeology gives us a front-row seat to the fascinating spectacle of human history, Except sometimes it leaves you on a cliffhanger and then ghosts you. Like, here's a weird rock, figure it out, and then just poof. Some ancient finds remain so baffling that even the sharpest scientific minds are left scratching their heads. Take the Neolithic stone balls, for example. Scientists hate these things because they don't know what they were used for. The stone balls have been found mainly in Scotland and date as far back as 3,200 years ago. More than 425 of these oddly carved spheres have been found, each about the size of a cricket ball. Or for my non-cricket playing Americans, a bit larger than a tennis ball and smaller than a baseball. According to Natasha Harlow, a research fellow at the University of Nottingham, their decorative designs match Neolithic pottery and monuments. Some balls were found in burial sites, others in settlements, and none seem to form a set. Their original purpose is a mystery. Were they ancient toys, sacred relics, very inconvenient bowling balls? No one knows. But if you have a guess, let me know in the comments. The Neolithic balls are a mystery that will likely never be solved, just like the Roman dodecahedra. Scientists are helpless to understand. Much like the Neolithic balls, Roman dodecahedrons have been found all over the place, especially in the Northwest Roman Empire. They date to Roman Britain from 43 to 410 AD. Around 130 have been discovered, and they are all finely crafted from copper alloys. The catch is that they never appear in Roman art or literature, and barely show any signs of wear. I don't know which artifacts are more bizarre. The Roman dodecahedra are a bunch of 12-sided relics with no clear purpose, leaving historians in an existential crisis. It's amazing that such small objects can cause such a commotion. Secrets under the Giza pyramid. Imagine digging through your couch cushions and finding a secret compartment. But instead of spare change and old popcorn, it's a mysterious underground structure that could change human history. And instead of your couch cushions, you're digging underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's more or less what scientists just did, except they used high-tech scanning equipment instead of, their hands. Archaeologists have detected an anomaly lurking beneath a royal graveyard near Khufu's 4,500-year-old pyramid, and they have no idea what's inside. Treasure, a secret chamber, the world's first lost and found box? First, how would you like a little history lesson? Don't worry, it's the fun kind. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, Egypt's biggest and oldest pyramid, was built to honor the pharaoh of the same name. If you were a big deal in ancient Egypt, you got a massive stone monument, which you already know. Surrounding the pyramid is an ancient cemetery packed with above-ground tombs called mastabas. These mastabas belong to Khufu's family and top officials, but one area in this necropolis stood out as unusual, a patch of land with nothing on it. No tombs, no markers, not even a no parking sign. Naturally, scientists got curious. Between 2021 and 2023, a team of researchers from Japan's Higashi Nippon International University, along with some others, decided to take a peek. But they peeked without physically digging. Using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, which is sort of like an X-ray machine for the Earth, they scanned the empty space. And guess what? They found something weird. According to their report, the scans revealed a mysterious L-shaped structure connected to something even deeper underground. This was not a natural formation, so it was definitely made by humans or time-traveling aliens. I don't know. The question now is, what is hiding underneath the anomaly? The top structure is about 33 feet long and buried 6.5 feet underground. Scientists think it was originally an entrance, but was later filled in with sand. Beneath the sandy, sealed entrance is a deeper, highly resistive anomaly. In science speak, that means researchers have no clue what they're dealing with. Life Sciences' Owen Jarris reports that this lower structure could be an empty chamber, a storage area, or a place packed with sand and gravel. Worst case scenario, it's ancient Egypt's least successful basement renovation project. In a best case scenario, this could be the hidden tomb of a king, a lost library, or a sealed coffin with an Anunnaki's body in it. Excavations are officially underway, and experts are eager to see what's hiding underground. If archaeologists do find treasure, they better watch out for the curse of the pharaohs. Whatever they uncover, I'll be sure to keep you posted. A special investigation into the Anunnaki. Ah yes, the Anunnaki, ancient deities, celestial overlords, or the original influencers of Mesopotamia. Some say they were gods, others claim they were ancient astronauts. A few conspiracy theorists are still convinced they run an underground coffee shop on Mount Hermon. But who were they really? Who were the Anunnaki? The name Anunnaki means those who came from heaven to earth. Sounds dramatic, right? In Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were the offspring of Anu and Ki, the sky god and the earth goddess. This is interesting because biblical tradition has a similar tale, with half-divine beings known as the Nephilim being born from the union of angels from the sky and human women from earth. Were the Anunnaki the Nephilim with a better PR team? One of the most famous sources on the Nephilim is the Book of Enoch, a text so controversial it got booted from the Bible's official canon faster than a bad contestant on a reality show. Early church fathers like Clement of Alexandria and Tertullian vouched for Enoch's authenticity, but eventually theologians decided not to include the part about rogue angels and their giant offspring destroying the planet. According to Enoch, a rebellious squad of 200 angels called the Watchers decided to seduce human women. Of course, this led to the birth of giants. Big, hungry, and apparently very destructive. The giants eventually started eating everything, including people. But you're probably wondering what any of this has to do with the Anunnaki. The truth is that a lot of scholars believe the Anunnaki are directly connected to the Nephilim, if they aren't one and the same. Scholars like Edward Lipinski, who found that ancient Mesopotamian texts identified the Anunnaki stomping grounds as none other than Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon was where the rebellious Watchers supposedly landed when they fell from heaven, and where they swore their unholy oath and set up a giant-making factory. Coincidence? Probably not. But does this mean the Anunnaki were aliens or gods? Did they manufacture humanity and giants? The best guy to ask might be Gilgamesh, the famous Sumerian king and part-time demigod who traveled to Mount Hermon in search of pre-flood wisdom over 3,000 years ago. According to the Epic of Gilgamesh, he was two-thirds god and renowned for his bodily stature. Ancient texts even describe his measurements, standing at a whopping 16 to 18 feet tall. Not only was Gilgamesh big, but he was also deeply philosophical, going on quests to understand the meaning of life. Gilgamesh's epic journey took him through the antediluvian world, where he sought wisdom from Utanapishti, the Mesopotamian version of Noah. Unfortunately, no amount of wisdom could save him from mortality. In the end, Gilgamesh, perhaps part Anunnaki himself, succumbed to death. In fact, almost all Anunnaki-related lore has the giants of the old world dying. In Enoch, God was so displeased with the Watchers that he ordered them to be bound and thrown into the earth's valleys for 70 generations. Meanwhile, in Greek mythology, the rebellious Titans were locked in Tartarus, which, fun fact, is the same word used in Peter 2:4 to describe where the fallen angels were sent. It's all connected, like some ancient cinematic universe where gods, giants, and rebellious angels all share the same lore. Maybe we haven't gotten to the bottom of just who the Anunnaki were or where they came from, but the connections are worth making. The Anunnaki, the Nephilim, Gilgamesh, the Greek Titans, the Olympians, the fallen angels. It's all one story. Whether the Anunnaki were gods, giants, fallen angels, or the first recorded case of aliens crashing an earthly party, we may never know for sure. What are your thoughts on all of this? Brain-eating cannibals. Deep inside Mazika Cave in southern Poland, researchers made a chilling discovery that rewrites our understanding of prehistoric life. It wasn't zombies feasting on the living. This was something far more real and disturbing. I have to warn you that things are about to take a dark turn. A fresh analysis of human remains dating to around 16,000 BC has confirmed something shocking. Prehistoric hunter-gatherers in the region were practicing cannibalism, and not just on rare occasions. It wasn't just a festive sort of munching on your neighbor's leg or eating one of your relatives with a side of mammoth meat. This was a regular part of their survival strategy. Let's take a closer look at the find. Researchers examined 63 human bone fragments found in the cave. Using high-tech 3D microscopy, they discovered that 70% of the bones bore cut marks, unmistakable evidence of butchering. The pattern of these marks indicated a preference for harvesting bone marrow and brains. Make no mistake, brains and bone marrow are pretty nutritious and delicious. Not that I know from personal experience. But seriously, what's up with brain cannibalism 18,000 years ago? Scientists think the timing might offer some clues. The last ice age was just starting to fade, and while environmental conditions were improving, population growth may have led to resource shortages. More people meant more mouths to feed. In the fight for survival, some groups may have turned to the ultimate taboo. The evidence suggests that bodies were processed for food shortly after death, meaning these weren't carefully orchestrated funerary rites. When someone died, they were used for food. Researchers propose that intense competition for munchies and territory may have led to violent conflicts, in which the victors quite literally consumed the defeated. The bones from the cave date back to almost 20,000 years ago. It was a time when human populations were expanding across Europe. And this place isn't the only site with suspicious bones. Evidence of cannibalism has been found in at least 5 different locations from the same period. It looks like prehistoric Poles were hungry for humans. But here's something even more outrageous. Cannibalism has been reported as far back as 800,000 years ago. People have been eating people for almost 1,000,000 years. It goes to show the ancient world was brutal, and when it came to life and death, the line between predator and prey wasn't always clear.
China's missing civilization.
Once upon a time, there was a civilization in China that lived underground. I've talked about a few different cave-dwelling cultures, but none of them compare to what I'm about to tell you. They don't even come close.
The Longnu Caves are considered by some to be the most mysterious sites in human history. The caves were carved an estimated 2,000 years ago, presumably by humans. Then they were lost, buried, and found by accident in the 1990s by some farmers. The caves can be found in China's eastern Zhejiang province near the Chu River.
The farmers who found the caves in 1992 were draining ponds, and instead the ponds turned out to be flooded caverns. There were 5 main caverns at first. Excavations since then have revealed 19 additional caves, most of them fairly small.
The caves were carved out of sandstone. They have slanted roofs and solid pillars to keep them from collapsing. Chinese scientists claim they found artifacts from the reign of Emperor Xuan of Han inside the caves, dating them to between 91 and 48 BC. So the artifacts prove that people were in the caves 2,000 years ago, but they don't prove that the caves were made 2,000 years ago. The Longnu Caves could have already been around, and people were just living in them like a bunch of squatters.
I haven't even told you why the caves are so amazing yet. It's the way they were built. It doesn't take an archaeologist to look at images of the Longnu Caves and realize there is something amiss. The caves were carved with expert precision, their walls perfectly molded as if with modern technology. It's doubtful that a random civilization that no one has ever heard of before had access to the kind of tech needed to make this place.
In China, there's only one other ancient site that's even remotely similar. It's called the Huashan Grottos, and it's 120 miles from the Longnu Caves. The grottos, carved from solid stone, do look a little similar. However, they were carved about 1,500 years after the Longnu Caves. There is nothing historically connecting them, at least not yet.
Final piece of the puzzle, or rather the final missing piece of the puzzle, is the distinct lack of information. Most places from the ancient world have at least some record of existing. A place as impressive as the Longnu Caves complex would have surely been written down by one scholar or another, but there isn't any mention of them anywhere. And there is no way this level of workmanship could have been completed in total secrecy. So, who was responsible? Was it King Gujian in 494 BC like Yang Hongxun suggested in 2014? Or are the caves even older, dating to a time when the sophisticated culture spanned the globe and lived in luxurious underground towns? What do you think? I want to know your theories in the comments.
The Sacred Gateways of Japan.
There are strange megaliths spread across the islands of Japan that hint at a civilization far older than anyone could imagine. Artifacts that seem completely out of time and space are scattered all over.
There are sacred gateways that look like pieces of alien technology. Something strange happened in Japan thousands of years ago, and we're determined to find out what. Let's start with a place that's old but supposedly not ancient.
It's called the Oya History Museum, built inside of a humongous abandoned stone quarry in Utsunomiya. The size of the empty caverns is preposterous, with a hard P. Somehow, the ancient Japanese created vaulted caverns big enough that you could ride an elephant on top of another elephant right through them. The caverns are gigantic. The miners must have had an exceptional understanding of engineering to make them, and they must have had access to some impressive tools. Historians claim the caverns were chiseled by hand during the Edo period to mine something called Oya stone. It's a soft yet durable type of volcanic stone that's been used for centuries. The former Imperial Hotel in Tokyo was built partially from Oya stone. Could the mines be older than historians are telling us? There is evidence of intense mining all across the Utsunomiya area. It looks like somebody or something showed up with a giant excavator and took chunks out of the hillsides. Mountains have been carved out so completely, they're practically hollow. It looks like more than just a bit of casual stone mining occurred here. This was a massive industrial operation. Who is truly responsible? There is more on the megalith builders of Japan coming up soon. Searching for the lost city of Zerzura. I'd like to tell you the tale of Africa's own version of Atlantis. This one is buried beneath desert sands rather than ocean waves. Travelers, explorers, and modern scientists have been trying to find it for decades, yet no one has ever been able to pinpoint the location of Zerzura. Zerzura is the epitome of a lost city. It's said to be hiding somewhere in the African sands west of the Nile, so between Egypt and Morocco, deep in the inhospitable desert. Those who go in search of it die of thirst and heat exhaustion. Even with the technological advancements of the 20th century, Zerzura remains buried. One of the earliest mentions of the lost city comes from 1481. A man was traveling with a small group through the Sahara Desert on their way to the oases of Dakhla and Kaga when they got stuck. Their trip came to a grinding halt as a violent sandstorm rose up out of nowhere. The group was blinded, they could hardly breathe, and were nearly buried alive. Well, most of them were buried alive. Only our protagonist survived, a man who called himself Hamid Kala. It was like that scene in Star Wars. You know the one. Hamid took refuge underneath a dead camel, protecting himself from the storm. When the sand stopped blowing, he emerged from his hiding place and found the landscape totally changed. Everyone was gone, and he had no idea where he was. It was like waking up with the worst hangover ever, only Hamid was lost in the Sahara. Alone, thirsty, and facing certain doom, Hamid didn't make it very far. He was about to collapse when a group of desert nomads appeared to help him. These desert nomads were unlike anyone Hamid had seen in the region before. They were extraordinarily tall, with pale skin and blue eyes. They looked more European than African. They also carried long, straight swords with them, unlike the curved scimitars that were typically used by warriors at that time. These mysterious people brought Hamid to an oasis in the midst of the western desert of Egypt, or maybe it was Libya. Hamid couldn't be sure where he was. Beyond the gate, Hamid beheld lush greenery, palm trees blowing in the wind, and people bathing in refreshing pools. It was a paradise. It was also nice that the people were kind. They treated the traveler as one of their own, even though he didn't understand their language, but he believed it was similar to Arabic, where the people of the oasis were not Muslim nor any religion that Hamid knew. He eventually fled the oasis because, although it was paradise, it was too unusual for him. After finding his way home, Hamid's story spread from camel caravan to camel caravan, then into the cities. By the 19th century, Zerzura had firmly established itself as a lost city of myth. But is it real? And who were the pale-skinned people living in it? In 1835, English Egyptologist John Gardner Wilkinson met an Arab who allegedly found the lost oasis while searching for a lost camel. His story was very similar to the story of Hamid. Naturally, Wilkinson went in search of it. If you were an adventurer in Egypt in the 19th century, wouldn't you have done the same? And neither did those who came after him. In the 20th century, Ralph Bagnold, Laszlo Almasi, and Patrick Clayton all failed on their expeditions in search of the lost city. And now for a quick break, because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Jules, Carr, and Leia for supporting this channel. Thanks so much, guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this.
The Crocodile Cave People of India.
In India, archaeologists have found evidence of a mysterious cave-dwelling civilization in the state of Andhra Pradesh. This civilization was around 7,000 years ago, but no one knows who they were or where they came from. I mean, 7,000 years is a really long time.
The discovery came as a big surprise to researchers in India. Scientist K. Ramakrishna Reddy found 5 caves in a remote region, 2 of them cut from the rock with tools. The other 3 caves were natural.
The exciting part was that Reddy found artwork scrawled on the walls of the caves. Strange etchings that give a cryptic glimpse into a culture that has been extinct for a very long time. This culture likely wasn't that advanced. They likely weren't given the keys to technological marvels by a group of aliens, but they are still mysterious.
The artwork on the cavern walls is mostly of crocodiles. There are dozens of images of crocodiles. Someone definitely had crocodile fever. They went as far as to draw a life-sized crocodile in red ochre, looking like a huge prehistoric beast.
The grouping of caves has been nicknamed the Boulder of Crocodile, although it's a little strange since there are no crocodiles nearby today and hardly any water to speak of. Scientists say there must have been water and crocs in the region in prehistoric times. 7,000 years ago, the landscape looked a lot different. Perhaps this cave culture worshipped crocodiles, or maybe crocodile meat was their main food source. What are your thoughts?
This rock just revealed a civilization.
In one of the most breathtaking places in the world, a rock has revealed a lost civilization. One rock, one civilization that nobody has ever heard of before. Scientists are about to be descending on Venezuela in droves. The falls start about 3,212 feet above sea level and plunge in a cascading torrent all the way to the bottom. Try going over that in a barrel.
The Canaima National Park is also home to Mount Roraima, a natural marvel shrouded in a perpetual cloud of mystery, both figuratively and literally. The mountain is almost 10,000 feet tall, its summit like a gigantic table hiding behind a screen of white, misty clouds. Its summit covers 12 square miles, with its cliffs sheer drops to certain doom. The reason the mountain is so mysterious is that it's nearly impossible to climb and has roots deep in local folklore. In 1884, when the Royal Geographical Society sponsored an expedition to climb the mountain, the local Pemon culture was not very happy. The Pemon claimed that no living person had climbed the mountain since the dawn of time. It was sacred to them, a real Olympus that even Mount Olympus in Greece is jealous of. People did reach the summit of the mountain at the end of the 19th century. Botanists, zoologists, and many other scientists found an untouched world. There was flora and fauna at the top of the mountain that had never been seen by human eyes. And now there's a whole new civilization to discover. A team of scientists led by José Miguel Pérez Gómez discovered 20 rock art sites. The sites were used either as a shelter for an indigenous culture or for ritual activities. Or maybe the rock sites were used for both.
The art is really neat, and not that much different from the red ochre crocodiles I told you about earlier. The artwork has been dated to 4,000 years ago. There are images of people, strange geometric designs, and star shapes that could indicate basic astronomy.
It's too early to gain an understanding of the socio-cultural context of these mysterious people, but archaeologists are on the case. They have already identified rock art in Brazil that looks similar and is also about 4,000 years old.
José's team has hypothesized that the civilization in Venezuela may have migrated into other South American countries. They first lived around Mount Roraima and Angel Falls, and I mean, honestly, who could blame them? But then they wandered off and started new cultures in other parts of the jungle. There could be uncontacted tribes in the Amazon who are descendants of these people.
The Bada Valley Megaliths. What's one of the last places in the world you expect to find hundreds of megaliths rising from the dirt like forgotten tombstones? If you answered Indonesia, you might be onto something. On the island of Sulawesi is evidence of a forgotten civilization that may have a connection to Easter Island. In 1908, archaeologists realized there was something important hiding in Sulawesi's Bada Valley. There are more than 400 megaliths in the valley, many of them clearly reminiscent of the towering moai of Easter Island, or as most people know them, the Easter Island heads. Archaeologists call them menhirs, anthropomorphic menhirs. The statues range in size, with some as tall as a person, and others hardly sticking out from the ground. They have big heads, expressive faces, and quite often crudely drawn male reproductive organs. They also don't have any limbs. That's a universal thing on Sulawesi statues. Although only around 400 have been found, locals believe there could be over 1,000. Many could be buried all the way underground, without a trace of them visible. You could be standing on top of one and not even know it. What's even more amazing is that statues are not the only megaliths in the Bada Valley. They get the most attention because they do look like Easter Island's Moai. But you just have to see the giant stone tubs. Scientists can't make sense of them. The huge stone tubs are partially buried, just like the menhirs, some of them looking as if they're in the process of sinking down into the Earth's core. Each tub looks like a jar that could fit a car inside of it. Each one also has a lid. They look like oversized cookie jars, and some of the lids are even decorated with what appear to be gorillas, just like how cookie jars are usually decorated with something cute. Like I said, scientists can't make sense of them. The jars are open, their lids discarded on the ground nearby. It looks like a giant sat down to have a feast and left their jars behind. Archaeologists are usually good at coming up with ideas and possible explanations for these types of mysteries, but in the Bada Valley, they're clueless. To make matters more confusing, it's believed the stone that the megaliths were carved out of does not exist on the island of Sulawesi. In other words, the stones came from far away. Seeing as they could be anywhere from 5,000 to 12,000 years old, transporting giant stones across land and sea is quite the achievement. Many believe the monuments of the Bada Valley are far older than mainstream scientists will ever admit. Anthropologist Martin Gray suggested the monuments were made before the last ice age, when Indonesia was part of a subcontinent called Sundaland. If true, it means the megaliths weren't built by a pre-flood civilization. They were built by a pre-flood and pre-ice age civilization. The Stone Age wall underwater. Scientists have discovered a megastructure from the Stone Age that may have been built by a civilization of reindeer hunters, or maybe a very different civilization. The twist is that the megastructure is fully submerged at the bottom of the sea. If there's ever been evidence of a worldwide flood that destroyed an antediluvian civilization, this is it. In 2021, Jacob Geersen took his students on a training exercise of the Baltic Sea. Jacob is a geophysicist with the Leibniz Institute who specializes in Baltic Sea research. He and his students use some majorly sophisticated technology to map the sea floor. It's something known as a multi-beam sonar system. It can map the bottom of the sea up to 6 miles from shore. What the team found in the sonar image was shocking to say the least. At the bottom of the sea was a huge structure that scientists estimated to be 11,000 years old. Though keep in mind the dating is not precise. Researchers suspect the structure could be even older. They've said it might be the oldest megastructure ever discovered. Everyone's calling it the Blinker Wall. Figuring out what exactly the Blinker Wall is has proven to be a lot more difficult than researchers anticipated. It looks like a wall, but then again, looks can be deceiving. Check out this image from Jacob Geersen showing the remains of the structure moving snake-like on the sea floor. This is from the sonar, but researchers have seen it with their own eyes. After they realized it was an artificial structure, Jacob lowered cameras all the way down to it. The images the cameras took revealed neatly stacked rows of stones forming a wall about 3.2 feet tall. The stones used to build this wall are huge, some of them weighing multiple tons. Others are smaller, maybe 220 pounds heavy. The weight of the stones makes it seem insane that a civilization of reindeer herders could have moved them. How do people who haven't invented the wheel or the written word transport boulders that weigh several tons? The short answer is that they don't. There is no similar structure that has ever been found in Europe. Jacob has come up with a different theory. He thinks it's a desert kite, which were large walls that ancient people used for hunting. Over the years, over 6,000 desert kites have been identified in the Middle East, found in places like Jordan and Saudi Arabia. The walls would funnel wild herding animals like deer into a smaller area so they could be easily slaughtered. This is Jacob's explanation for what he's found at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. It's a good guess, but is it right? Other experts are skeptical because desert kites haven't been found in Europe before. Why is there only one? And why is it submerged? Jacob and his team haven't been able to find any additional archaeological evidence near the Blinker Wall. They haven't found tools or artifacts. There are no remains of a city. So far, just an ancient wall. By the way, there is another one at the bottom of Lake Huron, but that's a story for another day, so be sure to stay tuned for all of the latest videos from the channel. The ancient alphabet of a lost people. A lost language has been found in Spain, exciting researchers across Europe. You should be excited too, because this lost language might be connected to the Tartessian civilization. There are those who believe the Tartessians were the real Atlanteans. The discovery was made by Joan Ferreri Jaén, an expert in Paleo-Hispanic languages. Joan learned about a small tablet that had been unearthed at an archaeological dig near Guarena. The dig was at a site called Casas del Turunuelo, which belonged to the Tartessians 2,500 years ago. While Joan was looking at photographs of the tablet, he recognized a Paleo-Hispanic sign inscribed on the stone. The Spanish National Research Council were the ones who revealed the discovery, posting pictures of the tablet online. The tablet shows two warriors fighting one another, but the researchers didn't mention the sign, so Joan gave them a call and had a chat with them. It turns out the tablet contained some lost pieces of a language used before the Latin alphabet arrived in Spain. It's a language so old and so obscure that scientists don't know much about it. But considering it was found at a Tartessian site, chances are it was used by that civilization. Now things are going to get a little mythical. The Tartessians and their fabled land of Tartessos first appear in ancient writings of the Greeks. The Greeks spoke about them as if they were from Atlantis. The land of Tartessos was a legendary place full of heroes and unimaginable wealth. After the Greeks, the Romans spoke of the Tartessians in the same way, as if they were demigods from a distant land. Tartessos is even mentioned in the Bible. What was it about these people that led to so much intrigue amongst their fellow ancient civilizations? Modern historians claim that Tartessians were very wealthy and that they lived in Spain's Iberian Peninsula. Their capital was called Tartessos. Most of their wealth came from trading metal and ore with the Phoenicians. Their civilization emerged in the 9th century BC, then was gone 500 years later. What happened during those 5 centuries is a blur in the history of the world. Scientists have only ever identified one Tartessian ruler, a king named Argathonius. They definitely had more than one ruler, but no other names are known. Their script has been incredibly difficult to decipher, and indeed to find copies of. Only about 3 examples of their written language have been found near Tartessos. Their history may never be recovered. When it comes to real civilizations that may have inspired the myth of Atlantis, the Tartessians are number 1. Japan's ancient pyramid. Did you know Japan has its own pyramid? Did you know that Japan also has its own Stonehenge? There are megaliths in this country that almost nobody has heard of before. There are so many to choose from, I don't even know where to start. There is the Ishibutai megalith in Asuka, the Oyu stone circle in Akita, the megalith perched at the top of Mount Tsukuba in Ibaraki, Whale Rock megalith in Fukushima, and more that aren't even named, like this place in Kochi. What is this thing? It looks like somebody stacked a bunch of circular boulders on top of each other in the middle of the forest. Judging by the fact they are slowly being eaten by the warm Japanese jungle, it's safe to say they have been there for thousands of years. Just how long ago did civilization appear in Japan? Scientists would have the world believe the Jomon culture was the first to take over the Japanese islands. They came onto the scene about 16,000 years ago, meaning their civilization was around long before the biblical flood. The Jomon predate Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, practically all major civilizations people are familiar with. Fun fact, the time between the rise of the Jomon and their disappearance is twice as long as the time between the Great Pyramid of Giza and today. But they weren't builders of great monuments. The Jomon culture consisted mostly of hunter-gatherers and early farmers. There was a small agricultural population which helped kickstart the invention of things like pottery. The Jomon people made jewelry from bone, had fairly advanced tools, and made mysterious figurines. One of the strangest things about the Jomon culture is that they made dogu figurines. These were small statues made more than 6,000 years ago from clay. They look similar to humans, only with some alien proportions. The Dogu figurines have arms, legs, a torso, and a head, but they aren't correct. The eyes take up almost the whole head, while the hands dangle from grotesquely bloated arms. There are tons of these things, and scientists have never been able to figure out what they were meant to be depictions of. There are even clay masks that look just like the Dogu figurines, with enormous eyes that take up the whole face. I want to say they look bug-eyed, but it's weirder than that. Could these figurines be depictions of a much more advanced civilization that came before the Jomon? I'd like to direct your attention to Mount Ashitaka, which is said to be a real Japanese pyramid. For centuries, locals have claimed the pyramid was built as the great mausoleum for Emperor Jimmu. According to myth, Emperor Jimmu was the founder of the Japanese nation on February 11th, 660 BC. But that's only a rumor. The pyramid could be significantly older. At the top of the mountain are megalithic stones so old that there is no memory of them in local lore. The site is known as Ashitaka-yama. In 1934, pyramid expert Katsuhisa Sakai visited the mountain and investigated the stones. Sakai announced that Ashitaka-yama is without a doubt the oldest pyramid shrine in the world. Of course, regular scientists don't agree, but they haven't been able to come up with a better explanation. And besides, mainstream science never agrees on anything this dramatic. No one has been able to solve the mystery of the megaliths and mountain-sized pyramids found all over Japan. And don't even get me started on the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Okinawa. That thing is huge, and mysteriously being ignored by almost everyone.
The oldest mummies in the world. The oldest mummies in the world are located at the ends of the earth, in a place few will ever see in their lifetime. They are older than Egyptian mummies by more than 2,000 years. When I say the end of the earth, I'm talking about Chile's Arica and Parinacota region, where the land gives way to the endless ocean. Here you will find the Chinchorro mummies, left behind by a civilization that lived across this vast landscape 9,000 years ago. That's a really long time. If Egyptian civilization began roughly 5,000 years ago, that means the Chinchorro were already established 4,000 years earlier. On the grand timescale of humanity, that is insane. This culture was prehistoric, but their mummification techniques were bar none. They were master mummifiers. As you can imagine, there isn't much that scientists know about these people. Almost everything relating to them is gone, including their cities, worn away by the sands of time. Only their mummies have miraculously survived. The oldest of the Chinchorro mummies are about 7,000 years old. They were first found by a German archaeologist named Max Bühler in 1917. Max came across the Chinchorro mummies just lying on a beach. Those were the good old days of archaeology, when you didn't even need to dig for mummies. However, because this was 1917, the technology wasn't available to determine the age of the mummies. It would take decades for radiocarbon dating to prove them older than the oldest mummies in Egypt. And now, after years and years of study, scientists have figured out how the Chinchorro pulled it off. I'm going to take you through their mummification process, so if you are eating, I recommend taking a quick break. According to anthropologist Bernardo Arriaza, the Chinchorro practiced intentional mummification. This is an important point because it means they mummified their dead on purpose, unlike other cultures who accidentally mummified dead bodies by leaving them in dry deserts or high up in the mountains. The first step was to create an incision in the body. Then, just like in ancient Egypt, the organs were removed. Only the Chinchorro didn't put them in fancy organ vases like the Egyptians did. While the body cavities dried out, the skin was removed. I don't envy whoever had this job. They had to take all the skin off, then process it, just like a hunter processes a deer hide. The hollow, skinless body was stuffed with plant fibers, soil, feathers, and grass. Then, when everything was ready, reeds were used as sewing thread to stitch the skin back onto the stuffed body. Why didn't they just leave it on in the first place? The face was covered in a clay mask and painted black. The body was painted bright red, and then the mummy was left in the sand of the Atacama Desert to rest for all eternity. And rest they did for 7,000 years until Max Uhle came along. The big mystery is that scientists don't know why the prehistoric culture came up with the idea of mummification. These were the earliest people to mummify their dead on purpose. But Egypt gets most of the glory. 200,000-year-old Oklahoma mosaic. Mainstream science tells us that the first people arrived in North America around 22,000 years ago. But if that's the case, how does mainstream science explain the 200,000-year-old mosaic floor discovered in Oklahoma? In 1969, construction workers stumbled upon a structure that they didn't quite recognize. It was a flat, perfectly uniform floor, obviously created by human hands. They didn't realize it at the time, but the construction workers were standing on top of a discovery that would rewrite the history of the United States. In the weeks following the discovery, there was a lot of excitement in the archaeological community. So much excitement that the Oklahoman published an article that caused a heated debate. Inside the article were black and white photographs of the mosaic, as you can see here. The article also contained quotes by Oklahoma City geologist Durwood Pate. Durwood said, "I'm sure it was human-made because the stones were arranged in perfect sets and parallel lines that intersected to form a diamond shape, all pointing east." That is a direct quote from Durwood after he studied the mosaic. Durwood also claimed to have found a post hole, likely used for holding some sort of pillar. And he found a grout-like substance between each individual stone of the mosaic. It was his expert opinion that the mosaic was made by an intelligent civilization. Now, here's where things drop completely off the deep end. Geological evidence points to the mosaic being a whopping 200,000 years old. Your ears do not deceive you. This structure is older than anything else ever found anywhere on the planet. It predates the Egyptian pyramids by 195,000 years. Durwood wasn't the only one to study the anomaly. Geologist Delbert Smith said, "It was clearly put there, but I have no idea who could have done it." Delbert claimed the mosaic appeared to cover an area of several thousand square feet. There were naysayers as well in 1969. Dr. Robert Bell at the University of Oklahoma claimed the mosaic was nothing but a natural formation. He refused to believe that a civilization existed 200,000 years ago. Unfortunately, the site is gone, completely destroyed. After about 2 weeks, the construction workers continued their excavation. Everything was destroyed to make room for a food warehouse. Durwood also said that before the construction continued, locals were visiting the site and breaking off pieces of the mosaic to take home with them. Maybe some of those pieces are forgotten, packed away in boxes and stashed in attics across Oklahoma. Let me know in the comments if you or anyone you know has a piece. The lost tunic of Alexander the Great. A ceremonial garment found in a tomb belonged to Alexander the Great. His tomb is still missing, so don't get too excited. But if the experts are right, this artifact may have been physically worn by one of the greatest generals this world has ever seen. It's like finding Julius Caesar's shoes or Cleopatra's dress. In the tomb of Alexander's half-brother, Philip III of Macedon, researchers recovered a purple tunic. The Greeks called this article of clothing a Mesoleucon serapis, just in case you were wondering. The unfortunate part is that the tunic is in what you might call a fragmentary state. It's like somebody put it in the oven and it became brittle and cracked into hundreds of tiny pieces. Take a look at this picture from when it was initially discovered in 1977. It doesn't really look like a tunic at all, but I assure you, it is. In fact, look at this other picture. This is a colorized version of an engraving from Louis Figuiere's 1867 Vie de Savant Illustre. It shows Alexander the Great wearing a purple tunic, the same purple tunic in the box. The guy in green sitting across from Alexander is legendary philosopher Aristotle. A little-known fact is that Alexander and Aristotle died within a year of each other. Alex in 323 BC and Aristotle in 322 BC. Although the tunic was initially discovered almost 50 years ago, it was only recently that Professor Antonios Bartsiokas conducted a study to confirm Alexander as the tunic's owner. Antonio said the physical description of Alexander's royal tunic is an exact match for the one in the tomb. A recent chemical and microscopic analysis revealed that the tunic was made from a special purple dye. The dye was reserved for use in making elite clothing. The tunic was something that would have only been worn by royalty. But why was the tunic in Alexander's brother's tomb? Antonius explained this conundrum easily enough. He said that after Alexander's premature death in Babylon, the tunic was inherited by Philip. That does make sense if you think about it. Of course, Philip would keep his brother's tunic as a sentimental treasure. After all, wouldn't you want a memento of your loved one? It's just a shame that the tunic can't solve the mystery of Alexander's missing tomb. Archaeologists have found the tomb of his brother, his father, his son, but no Alexander. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to say a huge thank you to Valerie Greer and Clinton Floyd for supporting this channel. Thanks so much! If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Tomb to Another World. Rituals, prehistoric ceremonies, and the best sunset you'll ever see. These things can all be found in one of the most famous prehistoric sites in Scotland. It's a place so far off the beaten path that if you ever visit, you'll most likely have it all to yourself. The archaeological site I speak of is in the Maze Howe Tomb, located in Orkney. The Orkney Islands are 10 miles off the coast of Scotland, far beyond the Highlands. The region is home to places like Skara Brae, a village built by Neolithic humans, and the magical stone circle of the Ring of Brodgar. There was a lot going on here in ancient times. As you approach the 5,000-year-old burial mound, you won't be particularly impressed. The Maze Howe tomb looks like an ordinary green hill from a distance, but it's not natural in the slightest. It's what's underneath the hill that draws modern pagans to the ancient place every year on the winter solstice. Through a small entrance, you enter a feat of engineering that shouldn't have been possible 5 millennia ago. Prehistoric builders constructed a monumental tomb aligned perfectly with the setting sun on December 21st, each and every year. As the last sun rays start to vanish at about 3:15 on the 21st, a narrow shaft of light moves down the open passageway of the tomb. Within moments, the passage is filled with an impossibly brilliant golden light. The light illuminates everything inside and focuses at the back to form a glowing doorway of pure brightness. It seems as though if you walk down the passage toward the glowing door, you would disappear into the light and never be seen again. Archaeologists don't think Maze Howe acted as a portal to another dimension, but that doesn't mean they're right. Phil Hopkins, the manager at Maze Howe, said the monument was likely used to help locals cope with winter depression. As we now move into winter, I think there are a few of you out there who can relate. Thousands of years ago, prehistoric humans in Scotland had to deal with darkness for 18 hours a day in the winter. They didn't have Netflix and hot chocolate to keep them sane, so they looked forward to one big event. On the winter solstice, people crowded around the tomb and marveled at the boom of golden light inside. This would have rejuvenated their souls. It would have been a promise that the sunlight would return in the springtime. It also may have acted as a promise of eternal life in another world. The ancients saw the portal of light and knew the afterlife was real. There are a lot of other mysteries surrounding this ancient mound. For example, archaeologists aren't sure who built it, or even who was buried inside it. The prehistoric culture of Orkney is one of Europe's most fascinating mysteries. The flood proved real. For 150 years, scientists have missed one very important aspect on an ancient Babylonian map of the world. Nobody realized that the map, which is considered the oldest world map ever made, has a reference to the biblical flood on it. The Bible copied their legendary fable of Noah, his ark, and all of his animals. They plagiarized the whole thing, changing a few names around to make it their own. But the authors of the Bible didn't copy the story maliciously. It might be that they were simply retelling the details of a real event that shook the earth. In 1882, archaeologists in the ancient Babylonian city of Sippar unearthed a clay tablet. It was one of the biggest discoveries that has ever been made, though it has never got much publicity. The tablet isn't very big, and for a long time, nobody even knew what it was. The clay is etched in cuneiform script, which isn't the easiest to translate. Dr. Irving Finkel, a curator at the British Museum, has been working hard to decipher the text on the tablet. He believes it to be the oldest surviving world map. The map shows Babylon, a few other cities, and the Euphrates River, all encircled by a water boundary labeled Bitter River. Bitter River likely means the ocean. This map depicts the entire world as it was known to the Babylonians 3,000 years ago. It even shows lands beyond the known world, filled with magic. The lands were home to trees that grew giant jewels, monstrous birds, and inhuman inhabitants. On the back of the clay tablet is a massive block of text describing all of these strange and mystical lands. Irving Finkel recently deciphered a few lines of text describing a gigantic vessel known as a Persiktu. This is amazing because the only other references to a Persiktu are on other Babylonian tablets detailing the flood myth. The Persiktu was the Ark. In the Babylonian version of the story, Noah is replaced by a man named Utnapishtim. They may have different names, but their stories are basically the same. Noah and Utnapishtim both save all of the animals of the world from the devastating flood. They even land in the same place. The Ark lands on Mount Ararat and the Persiktu lands on Mount Urartu. Most scholars think these mountains are one and the same. There is a second Sphinx. In ancient Egypt, sphinxes typically traveled in pairs. Two sphinxes could be found in front of tombs, outside important buildings, and guarding gateways. So let me ask you, why is there only one sphinx at the pyramids of Giza? It's because one of them is missing. Archaeologist Michael Poe is convinced there used to be two sphinxes standing before the Egyptian pyramids. There is evidence that points to both original sphinxes being built prior to the pyramids. They may have come from an earlier and more advanced culture. This is a huge bombshell. The revelation has the potential to change history books, so take a breath if you need to. Things are only going to get crazier. Starting with our friend Khafre, the son of Pharaoh Khufu. Khufu was the one who built the Great Pyramid of Giza as his final resting place. His son Khafre built the second tallest pyramid at Giza. Khafre was also the one who supposedly had his face carved onto the Sphinx. A huge controversy surrounds the dating of the Sphinx. Many scholars claim it was built by Khafre around 2570 BC to guard the procession route to his pyramid. However, there are unusual ancient accounts that dispute this theory. One account claims that Khafre discovered the Sphinx buried in the desert. It already had a face of its own, but Khafre destroyed it. He modified the Sphinx to bear his own face. In the same source, which is an ancient and fragmented papyrus, it's claimed that there were originally two sphinxes. The other one was on the opposite side of the Nile. Amazingly, there are other accounts from Greek, Roman, and Muslim travelers describing this second sphinx at Giza. I can even give you some names like Al-Idrisi, Ibn Battuta, and Nasir-i Khosrau. They all mention a second sphinx in their writings, which was allegedly destroyed around the year 1000. So who destroyed the other sphinx? And why don't we talk about this more? These are questions I can't answer. Sadly, the opposite side of the Nile across from the pyramids is a dense urban jungle, so there is little chance of the other sphinx ever being found. It's buried under towering concrete skyscrapers now. Ragnarök was the real apocalypse. What if the apocalypse already happened 1,500 years ago? According to a new paper published in the Journal of Archaeological Science Reports, Ragnarök was the real deal. The Viking apocalypse nearly wiped out everyone in Denmark. In the old Norse sagas, everything ends at Ragnarök. A series of terrifying events lead to a final battle, sort of like the one plotted at Armageddon in the Bible's version of the end of days. Thor, Odin, Heimdall, Loki, all your favorite Viking deities are destroyed and the world burns. I don't mean to get all Old Testament here, but that's Ragnarök. In Norse mythology, Ragnarök is the death of the gods and the incineration of the world, followed by a global flood. Then, once the planet has been cleansed, a new world rises from the ashes. The parallels between the Old Norse sagas and the Bible are kind of shocking. The Ragnarök saga says that after the flood destroys the world, it will be repopulated by two human survivors. The Bible has Adam and Eve. The Vikings had Lif and Lifthrasir.
Scientists have found evidence for the real Ragnarök, but it didn't originate in Scandinavia with the Norse. It started in America. In the middle of the 6th century AD, 2 volcanic eruptions occurred in North America. These volcanoes released such massive amounts of ash and sulfur dioxide that it was swept into the atmosphere and carried away on the wind. The unstoppable mass of ash made it to the northern hemisphere, where it blocked out the sun and caused the climate to drastically change. It was instant winter, and things did not go well for those affected. There are accounts of this happening all over the world. In China, chroniclers wrote that the sun shone pale and cold as the moon. How would you like to live in a world of permanent winter? Some of you might not mind, but listen to this. Along with the pale moon came crop failure. In China, the food suddenly ran out. Without the sun in the sky to grow crops, there wasn't much to eat. Scientists at the National Museum in Denmark wanted more than just written accounts. They turned to trees for an explanation. By cutting open trees and studying their cores, they were able to pinpoint 3 specific years in which trees suffered slow, hampered growth. The years 539, 540, and 541 AD. These were the years of Ragnarök. The archaeological record for those 3 years shows an increase in buried treasure. It looks as though people across Denmark buried their valuables as ceremonial offerings. They were trying to beseech the gods to give them back the sun. In the myth of Ragnarök, before the apocalypse is Fimbulwinter. Just before everything gets crazy, eternal winter falls upon the land. When summer never showed up in 539 AD and then skipped work again in 540, people in Denmark must have thought Fimbulwinter was upon them. It's unclear how widespread the devastation was. However, there is evidence of a steep population decline in Denmark during those years. Even if Ragnarök is just a story, the volcanic apocalypse was real and terrifying for those who lived it. Who built these stone giants? The Bada Valley megaliths are proof of a transcontinental culture. These surviving stone giants suggest an ancient civilization dominated Southeast Asia, their kingdom even bigger than that of the Khmer Empire. When it comes to Asian empires, it's tough to beat the Khmer. Their ancient capital of Angkor is one of the most visited sites in all of Asia. But the Khmer were around in the Middle Ages. The civilization you and I are investigating today was around 5,000 years ago. In 1908, explorers in the Bada Valley of Indonesia came across statues larger than life. Now, almost 120 years later, the megaliths of the valley still haven't all been formally cataloged. There are a few hundred of them at least, and likely a few hundred more buried under the jungle. The megaliths still standing are incredible to see firsthand. They tower over anyone who stands before them, and no one knows who built them. Experts don't even know what the megaliths are supposed to represent. They kind of look like humans, but also a little like aliens. Let's say they depict human-ish life forms. But the megaliths don't seem to serve any purpose. They weren't found accompanied by towns or other ruins. Just like on Easter Island, there are hundreds of Bada Valley megaliths built, seemingly just because. I mention Easter Island because the Bada Valley statues look an awful lot like the Moai statues of Easter Island. Even the construction techniques are similar. But Easter Island is thousands of miles across the open ocean. There are other similarities in the ancient world too. Archaeologists have noted how the megaliths in Indonesia match those discovered in Laos and Cambodia. I think there are some other ones in Chile as well. Let me know if you can think of any more in the comments. When trying to figure out a date for the Bada Valley megaliths, that's when things get really messy. Some historians say the giant statues are only a couple centuries old. Others claim they could be more than 5,000 years old. If they are truly ancient, predating Stonehenge itself, that's a juicy mystery. It could mean there was a seafaring civilization back then, one that built similar styled megaliths across Asia, the Pacific Ocean, and who knows where else. In the centuries since the megaliths arrived in the jungle, strange stories have been told to explain them. Some local villagers claim the megaliths are vicious criminals who were turned to stone. Others claim they were the victims of human sacrifice. There are even rumors that the megaliths have supernatural powers. They have been said to disappear, only to turn up miles away in a totally different spot.
Shocking secrets of Halloween. I know Halloween is over, but I still want to talk about something spooky. Something connected to magicians, rituals, creepy cults, and death hexes. Each year on October 31st, the city of Budapest celebrates the original Halloween, almost the same way the Celtic people celebrated it 2,000 years ago. Wait, Celtic people in Budapest? Aren't the Celts from Ireland? That is a misconception. The Celtic people, although commonly associated with Ireland, were spread all across Europe in ancient times. More than 20 centuries ago, a band of Celts established the settlement of Ac, the very center of the city we now call Budapest. It took a while for it to become Budapest. Ac was replaced by the Roman city of Aquincum, which was populated by temples dedicated to Mithras and to Mithraic mysteries. The worshippers of Mithra were famous for conducting nude initiation rituals. What a club! You are not allowed in until everyone sees you with your clothes off. Before and after the Romans took over, the Celtic people celebrated Samhain each year on Halloween. They practiced it in Hungary just as they practiced it in Ireland. In the 1800s, Irish immigrants brought the festival to the United States, where it became All Hallows Eve, and now it's known as Halloween. The Aquincum Museum in Budapest is the only place in the city where you can find a public Samhain event these days. It's the one place where Celtic heritage hasn't been buried under countless tons of changing history. The truth of the original Celts is literally buried underneath Budapest. Archaeologists have never found the settlement of Ac. There was a large cemetery from 2,300 years ago found in 2004, but that's as close as anyone's ever gotten. Can you guess why people in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales are often more associated with the Celts than other Europeans? It's because the Celtic culture survived in isolation in the British Isles. The Celts of Hungary dissolved as they intermingled with other populations. In Ireland, people see themselves as the direct descendants of the Celts. It's why Samhain is so popular there, but only recently became a thing again in Hungary after being gone since the Middle Ages. Secrets of jungle civilizations. The extent of civilization in the Maya lowlands far exceeds anything archaeologists had imagined. Pyramids, plazas, massive cities, secret water reservoirs, all these features and more are being found hidden in the Mexican jungle. When I tell you how many structures have been found, you're going to be shocked. According to professors at Tulane University, researchers found 6,700 structures in the jungle near Campeche. 6,700 is a lot. The Maya civilization was much denser than anyone thought. One of the most impressive structures was an actual city. Researchers identified a metropolis from 1,500 years ago. The city's name is Valeriana, and it was home to a ball court and temple pyramids. Scientists believe it was a major political capital for the Maya, but nobody had ever heard of it before. That's because the jungle ate it. Some of these ancient structures were found by archaeologists wading through swamps and remote forests. The rest were found using LiDAR technology. LiDAR is something I've talked about extensively on the channel. It's a truly awesome technology for archaeologists. Light detection and ranging is used to scan jungle areas, creating a 3D map of the surface beneath the trees. It's like X-ray vision for the jungle, exposing structures that no human eye has seen in millennia. Scientists are only now starting to put together the full scope of Maya civilization. Up until recently, archaeologists primarily studied areas already known to contain ancient ruins. With the help of laser scans, it is now clear that almost every square inch of the jungle was covered in Maya structures. The dense jungle of Campeche 1,500 years ago wasn't as thick as it is now. It was a densely populated urban landscape. The Maya engineered the forest to suit their needs. Then, when their civilization collapsed, the jungle reclaimed everything. Scientists are going to be spending decades rebuilding the Maya. But Mexico isn't the only place where a civilization was swallowed by the jungle. The exact same thing was recently found in the Amazon. Scientists are saying that 90% of human history in the Amazon rainforest was swallowed by the jungle. A team of specialists from the French National Center for Scientific Research recently found a tiny piece of that history. Yet again, they did so using LiDAR technology. Scientists scanned the jungle and found a city in Ecuador from 2,500 years ago. Just like the new discovery in Mexico, scientists found evidence that the Ecuadorian jungle is different today than it was in 500 BC. The team says that up to 100,000 people were living in the area. That is a ton of people. So many people would have cut down a significant portion of the jungle to make it habitable. Researcher Antoine Dorison told the BBC that the way we see Amazonian cultures is changing. Amazonians did not live in small groups of partially naked people in thatch huts. They dwelled in complex urban societies, the same as you would find in Greece or Egypt or Mesopotamia. The question is where these people went. The Amazonian civilization disappeared around 600 AD. Whatever happened to them, it didn't have anything to do with the Spanish. They wouldn't arrive for almost another 1,000 years. The Kingdom of King Nimrod. Shortly after the Great Flood mentioned in the Bible, a man named Nimrod rose to power and started causing some serious chaos. King Nimrod was no ordinary guy. According to the good book, he was the first person to be described as a mighty man. But this wasn't exactly a compliment. Mighty can also mean tyrant, and that was Nimrod to a T. He didn't just want to be powerful, he wanted to rule over everyone, even God himself. Big mistake, buddy. Huge! Nimrod was the grandson of Ham, one of Noah's sons, and he took his ambitions to new heights. He founded the city of Babel, a name the Babylonians would say meant Gate of God. But here's where it gets tricky. The name was later reinterpreted by the Hebrews to mean he confused, which might give you a clue about the chaos Nimrod caused. The name Babel is probably familiar, and that's because it's where the infamous Tower of Babel was built. You know, the ones that humans built to try to reach the heavens, and God said, nope, not today, and made them all speak different languages. Fun times. While the Bible doesn't say Nimrod built the tower directly, it does mention him as the founder of Babel. So most historians assume that he played a major role in the construction of this massive ziggurat. This wasn't just a tower. It was a symbol of humanity's rebellion against God, thanks to Nimrod's influence. King Nimrod wasn't content with just ruling over Babel, though. Oh no, this guy wanted to expand his empire. He conquered territories across Mesopotamia, establishing cities like Nineveh. He was basically the first empire builder, uniting people under his iron-fisted rule. Some say he even extended his kingdom into Assyria, building more cities there. Nimrod was a man on a mission to control everything and everyone. Some legends say that Nimrod was also a mighty hunter, not just of animals, but of people. The Bible's description of him as a hunter before the Lord likely means that he was ruthless against both beasts and his neighbors, treating them like prey. And if that's not enough, some myths even claim he was a dragon slayer, taking down the last of the dinosaurs that had survived the flood. Now that's a story you don't hear every day. Interestingly, many scholars believe that Nimrod wasn't just a biblical character. He may have been based on Sargon the Great, one of the first kings to establish a massive empire in Akkad, or modern-day Iraq. Both figures seem to match up in terms of timeline, achievements, and personality. They were described as ambitious, ruthless, and determined to carve out their own kingdom. But of course, Nimrod's empire didn't last forever. After his death, his kingdom fell into chaos, and eventually, different civilizations like the Amorites and later the Babylonians rose to power. Nimrod's empire was left in ruins, but pieces of it were discovered in the mid-19th century. What remained of Nineveh was found, including 2 mounds, a cemetery, and some ancient artwork. The city of Babel, however, has yet to be uncovered, begging the question, was it ever real to begin with? What do you think? Jomsborg. According to legend, there was once a stronghold filled with Viking mercenaries on the coast of the Baltic Sea. It was known as Jomsborg, and the people there were known as Jomsvikings. But was this place real, or was it all a tall tale? People have been searching for evidence of its existence for years, but nothing promising was ever discovered. Until recently. The hunt for the legendary Jomsborg just got way more interesting thanks to a construction project on Hangman Hill, Wolin Island. Now, you might think a place named Hangman Hill would only have creepy vibes, and you'd be right. The spot was known for executions, human sacrifices, and ancient cemeteries. But instead of uncovering some gruesome bones, archaeologists stumbled upon something far more fascinating. They found a possible Viking stronghold, which might just be the infamous Jomsborg. You can picture Jomsborg as the medieval New York of the Viking world, according to some historians. It was a bustling trading hub where Vikings, Germans, and Slavs all hung out. They didn't just trade in goods like amber and salt, they also dealt in something a bit more sinister: slaves. The Vikings were running the Baltic coast, enslaving locals and selling them to faraway places like Morocco. For centuries, scholars have argued about whether Jomsborg even existed. Some thought it was just a fairy tale from ancient sagas, but recent finds on Hangman Hill, like charcoal wood fragments dating back to the 10th century, have archaeologists feeling like they are close to cracking the case. Dr. Filiopoviak believes they are about 80% sure they have found the real Jomsborg. Can you imagine being this close to solving a mystery that's been around for more than 500 years? According to old texts, Jomsborg was home to the Jomsvikings, a legendary group of elite mercenaries. They were sort of like the Navy SEALs of the Vikings, feared and respected across Europe. Over the years, people have tried to claim Jomsborg for various reasons. The Nazis, for example, were all over the idea of finding proof that Vikings and their so-called pure Nordic bloodlines were the dominant race during the early medieval period. After World War II, Poland kept up the search, hoping to reinforce their claim over the area by uncovering more evidence of a Viking presence. Fast forward to today, and Jomsborg fever is stronger than ever, especially with Viking culture being all the rage. Thanks to TV shows, movies, and video games, everyone wants to be a Viking. But the real-life Vikings were a bit different from their Hollywood counterparts. They weren't just blonde-haired, blue-eyed warriors who raided for fun. They were more complex, and their story is still being pieced together brick by brick, or rather, shard by shard. And fun fact, true Vikings never actually wore helmets with horns. Sorry to disappoint you, but you might have already known that by now. For now, the quest to fully uncover Jomsborg continues. But one thing's for sure, this legendary Viking stronghold is more than just a myth. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a huge thank you to Dean Age and Brendan Cornish for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Lemuria. Were there advanced civilizations on Earth long before we thought possible? That's what some people believe Lemuria might have been. But why? Listen to this and let me know what you think about the theory of Lemuria in the comments. The story of Lemuria, the most bizarre continent that likely never existed, begins with a small problem that Philip Sclater faced in 1858. Sclater was a respected scientist who studied biogeography, the study of species and ecosystems across time and space. And throughout his research, he noticed something strange. Lemur fossils had been found in both Madagascar and India. This was confusing because back then, Madagascar and India were part of two entirely separate biogeographical realms. So how did lemur bones end up in both places? What did Sclater do? He decided to create a whole new continent to explain it. He proposed that there had once been a massive land bridge connecting Madagascar to India, and he named this hypothetical continent Lemuria in 1864. And so Lemuria was born, at least in the imagination. Sclater's idea filled a gap in scientific thinking, but it also opened up a world of possibilities that went far beyond lemurs. By the mid-19th century, there weren't many new places left to discover, so people were excited by the thought of an entire lost continent. The idea of Lemuria sparked the curiosity of scientists and the public alike. Then, in 1870, German biologist Ernst Haeckel suggested that Lemuria might have been the birthplace of humanity itself. Forget Africa, Haeckel thought. Lemuria was where human civilization began.
Things got even weirder when Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, which is a mystical and spiritual philosophy, incorporated Lemuria into her belief system in the 1880s. According to her, the people of Lemuria were part of the third root race of humanity, a concept that takes a hard turn into pseudo-scientific theory. Blavatsky and her fellow theosophist Charles Leadbeater claim to know all about Lemuria through astral clairvoyance, which are fancy words for mystical visions. Apparently, Lemurians were 15 feet tall, flat-faced, and reproduced by laying eggs. They could also walk backward as easily as they could walk forward. As if things weren't strange enough already, by the early 1900s, William Scott Elliott had expanded on this vision of Lemuria, describing its people in even more colorful terms. Meanwhile, in India, some nationalists and mystics started connecting Lemuria with Kumari Kandam, a legendary lost land mentioned in Tamil literature. According to Tamil revivalists, Kumari Kandam was a cradle of Tamil civilization that sank into the ocean. But that was just the beginning. In 1926, James Churchward gave Lemuria yet another makeover, renaming it Mu and moving it to the Pacific Ocean. Now Lemuria was not just a lost continent, but a central figure in myths about ancient advanced civilizations. In the American imagination, Lemuria found its home in Mount Shasta, California. Some believed that the survivors of Lemuria had retreated to live in underground cities filled with magic crystals beneath the mountain, popping out occasionally in flowing white robes. But by the 1960s, Lemuria was officially debunked when the theory of plate tectonics took the stage. This explained how continents drift. It turned out that India and Madagascar really had been connected millions of years ago, but not by a sunken land bridge. Instead, they had been part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. So, although scientific Lemuria was laid to rest, its mystical version lives on. Even today, the Lemurian Fellowship, founded in 1936, teaches the so-called wisdom of the ancient Lemurians. And in Southern California, Lemurians have their own spot in the local imagination, even if they are just legends told to children to keep them from wandering too far off. The Decline of Cahokia. Long before Europeans set foot in the Americas, Cahokia was the largest, most bustling city north of Mexico. But around 1350, this grand city was mysteriously abandoned by the Mississippians, and no one knows why. So where did all the people go? At its peak, Cahokia was home to 10,000 to 20,000 people, making it about the same size as London back then. Located in southern Illinois, near present-day St. Louis, it was built by the Mississippians, a Native American group that occupied much of the middle and east of the United States. They were master urban planners. They used astronomy to align their city and build huge earthen mounds, one of which still stands today at 100 feet tall, covering 14 acres. It was a bustling metropolis, a pre-Columbian equivalent of Manhattan, drawing people from all over, like the Natchez, Pensacola, and Choctaw. Archaeologists discovered that about a third of Cahokia's residents weren't even local. So, essentially, this city was a big melting pot where cultures and customs mixed freely. It must have been a vibrant and cosmopolitan place to live, like the ancient New York. Cahokia wasn't just a random collection of huts. The Mississippians planned it carefully, laying out courtyards, homes, and public plazas. In the town center stood massive earthen mounds, including one known as Monk's Mound, where political and spiritual leaders gathered for ceremonies. They even built a wooden palisade around the city's core, almost 2 miles long. But why all the security? Cahokia was surrounded by peaceful neighbors, and there is little evidence of outside attacks. It turns out the real danger may have been within. Some believe that Cahokia was designed as a pilgrimage city, a place where people came for religious festivals and ceremonies. The city's alignment with the sun and stars hints that it was a spiritual center. But things weren't all sunshine and cornfields. The Mississippians practiced ritual human sacrifices. Archaeologists unearthed burial mounds filled with hundreds of bodies, many of them young women who were likely strangled and sacrificed.
Men were found with their heads and hands cut off, and some had been clubbed to death. There were no signs of invasion or war, so it seems the violence came from inside. Talk about some scary internal politics. By around 1100, Cahokia had reached its population peak. Around 1350, it was a ghost town. So what caused the collapse? No one knows for sure. Some theories suggest climate change, drought, or resource exhaustion. Others think political unrest or social tensions could have caused the Mississippians to pack up and leave. The Mississippians simply walked away, and with them, Cahokia vanished into history. And here's the weirdest part. Cahokia doesn't even show up in Native American oral history. Whatever happened there, people didn't want to remember it. Cahokia's mounds still stand today, telling the story that its people left behind, however vague and confusing that might be. The area is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting around 250,000 visitors a year. And still, nobody can say for sure why this place was abandoned. What possibly could have happened that was so bad in Cahokia to cause upwards of 20,000 people to pack up and leave? Let me know what you think in the comments. The Lost Race of Giants. The tale of giant skeletons found in North America sounds like a story made up by conspiracy theorists, but it's actually one of the most debated topics in archaeology. Imagine stumbling upon a skeleton twice as large as any person you've ever seen, buried deep in the earth. That's exactly what numerous reports from the 19th and early 20th centuries claim to have found. Skeletons belonging to a race of giants. These weren't just tall people. Some had extra teeth, oversized skulls, and jawbones big enough to fit around the face of a normal person. These so-called giants were reportedly discovered all across the United States, especially in places like the Ohio River Valley and along the Mississippi River. These areas were home to ancient cultures like the Adena, Hopewell, and the Mississippian civilizations, known for their mysterious massive mounds. You might ask what's so special about these mounds. Well, they often contained burial sites, and some of them reportedly housed these massive skeletons. One famous example comes from Kentucky in 1841. Workers digging on a farm found a skeleton so large that the thigh bone alone was 6 inches longer than that of any man in the area, and the jawbone could fit around a normal man's entire head. Over in Illinois, mounds were opened up to reveal skeletons buried in a sitting position, legs extending toward the center. Some skeletons measured a staggering 7 to 8 feet tall. And if you think that's shocking, there were also reports of double and even triple rows of teeth in some of these giant skulls. Another example of this lost race of giants was found in West Virginia. A burial mound uncovered there revealed a skeleton measuring over 7 feet long, and that's not even the weirdest part. In Brownstown, 2 skeletons were found together. One was over 7 feet tall, while the other was only 4 feet tall and deformed. This led to speculation that the giants might have lived among other strange beings. Were they friends? Enemies? It's hard to say. Florida brought its own giant to the party. One excavator was thrilled to find what he thought was the most massive skeleton he had ever seen, complete with an enormous stone axe nearby. But just as he began to study the skull, it crumbled to dust in his hands. What a bummer. Still though, based on the size of the bones, this couldn't have been the skeleton of a normal human. Louisiana has a history with giants as well. In a mound there, a skull was found with a whopping 40 teeth, 8 more than usual. Researchers were baffled. There was no way this could be the result of head binding or other artificial means. It seemed like these people were born this way, leading to more questions about their origins. That's only 5 states out of 50 in America with evidence of this lost race of giants. But who's to say that more proof can't be found in other places? Maybe we just need to look a little harder. So what happened to these giants? Some claim that the Smithsonian Institution, which handled many of these discoveries, quietly dismissed or covered up the findings. In the early 1900s, Alois Hrdlicka, a leading anthropologist at the Smithsonian, made it his mission to debunk the idea of ancient giants. He wrote off many of the discoveries as exaggerations or the result of people's overactive imagination. After all, who wouldn't want to believe in giants? Herlishka said these so-called giants were nothing more than tall individuals, and that the stories had been blown way out of proportion. However, not everyone agrees. Many alternative historians and amateur archaeologists believe that the remains of these giants were real, and the denial by the Smithsonian was part of a larger effort to rewrite history. Whether or not the giants existed, their story has captivated people for generations. So, were there really giants roaming ancient America? Maybe, maybe not. After hearing about all these stories, though, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. The Cucuteni Trypillian culture. The Cucuteni Trypillian culture is one of history's great mysteries, and they had some pretty wild habits. They had this baffling tradition where every 60 to 80 years, they would burn their entire villages to the ground. These people intentionally set their homes on fire. But why on earth would they do that? Between 5500 and 2750 BC, this ancient society flourished in parts of present-day Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. They were incredibly advanced for their time, building multi-story homes, creating beautiful pottery, farming wheat and barley, and even working with copper tools. But despite their progress, they had this baffling and fiery tradition. Archaeologists have tried to figure out the reason behind it for centuries. At first, they figured maybe it was accidental. Lightning strikes, enemy attacks, or maybe the homes were just highly flammable. After all, houses made of wood, clay, and packed with grains and textiles are basically giant tinderboxes. But as researchers dug deeper, both literally and figuratively, they realized something strange. The burns were too consistent, too deliberate. It wasn't some random disaster. It was on purpose. And oddly enough, this phenomenon isn't exclusive to the Cucuteni Trypillian culture. In fact, it happened across several ancient European cultures. So much so that archaeologists have given it a cool name, the Burned House Horizon. It stretched from Romania to Hungary, Serbia, and beyond, with multiple cultures seemingly obsessed with setting their homes ablaze. Why did they do this? There are a few theories. One theory suggests it was symbolic. Serbian archaeologist Mirjana Stevanovic believes the houses were burned for cultural or religious reasons. They could have symbolized death, turning from homes of the living into homes of the dead. Others, like Russian archaeologist Evgeny Krychevsky, thought it was a practical move. He argued that the flames hardened the clay walls into a ceramic-like surface, making the houses more durable, and even maybe fumigating them. It's like a prehistoric version of a home makeover, except instead of repainting, they used fire. Other researchers have tested these theories by burning things down, in the name of science, of course. In 1977, 2 archaeologists set fire to a house in Serbia to see what would happen. The result? The wooden roof burned away, but the clay walls stayed intact. This wasn't a fluke. Other experiments with historically accurate Cucuteni Trypillian houses had the same outcome. So these burnings were 100% deliberate. And get this, it took a massive amount of wood to pull this off. For a 1-story building, they needed 130 trees worth of firewood, and for a 2-story one, 250 trees. If a whole village of 100 houses was burned, they would need to clear about 3.8 square miles of forest. The Olmecs. Do you think you could carve a giant head out of solid stone? It might seem hard for us today, but people were doing it thousands of years ago. But how did they accomplish such a thing without advanced tools? Before the Aztecs ever dominated Mexico, there were the mysterious Olmecs, a civilization so old and influential that they are often called the mother culture of Central America. The Olmecs lived from around 1200 BC to 400 BC, long before the Aztecs even got started, and their influence stretched far beyond their time. So who were these ancient people, and why do they matter so much? This civilization was discovered in the 1850s by a farmer while he was clearing forested land in Veracruz. He was just going about his business when all of a sudden he found a colossal head, a sculpture now known as Tres Zapotes Monument A. However, the Olmec culture remained unknown to historians until 1869, when Mexican traveler José Melgari Serrano published a description of the head. He described it after visiting the site for the first time in 1862, when the sculpture was still only partially excavated, and after years of research, a picture began to emerge of this mysterious culture. The Olmecs built their civilization along the southern coast of the Gulf of Mexico, in what are now the states of Veracruz and Tabasco. But let's talk about the real stars of the Olmec show, their colossal heads. These things are huge, standing between 3 and 11 feet tall and weighing tons. They all seem to represent older, powerful men with chubby cheeks, flat noses, and slightly crossed eyes. Some people think these might be depictions of Olmec rulers, which makes sense because it would take serious resources to carve these bad boys. At least 17 heads have been found, and they are some of the most iconic artifacts left by the Olmec. In reality, though, no one is 100% sure what these heads were for. Were they art, symbols of power, a kind of ancient propaganda? The mystery has yet to be solved. So what happened to the Olmecs? By 400 BC, they vanished, leaving behind a lot of questions. The acidic rainforest soil dissolved most of their skeletons, so even their physical appearance is a bit of a puzzle. But they weren't forgotten. Their name actually comes from the Aztecs, who came much later. They called them Olmec, meaning rubber people. Why? Because they were the first to make rubber and invented the famous Mesoamerican ball game that used a rubber ball. Even though the Olmec disappeared, their legacy lives on. They laid the groundwork for some of the greatest civilizations to follow. The lost city of Aztlan. Have you ever heard of the legendary homeland of the Aztec called Aztlan? Some people believe it's a real place, while others think it could just be another mythical city like Atlantis or El Dorado. But I want to know what you think. Listen to this and tell me your thoughts in the comments. The Aztec people created one of the most powerful empires in ancient America, but their origins are a bit mysterious. According to legend, their journey began in a place called Aztlan, an island that may or may not have existed. While searches have stretched as far north as Utah, no one has ever found proof of this fabled island. So what do the legends say about Aztlan? They tell of 7 tribes that lived together in a place called Chicomostoc, or the place of the 7 caves. These tribes later settled near Aztlan. One group, the Mexica, which later became known as the Aztec, were the last to leave. According to the story, they were possibly delayed by a lengthy drought, but they eventually left under the guidance of their god, Huitzilopochtli, who led them to their future empire in what is now Mexico City. Apparently, the god also made them change their name. In some versions of the story, Aztlan was a paradise. In others, it was a place ruled by cruel overlords from which the Aztecs had to escape. Either way, the place holds a special significance in Aztec history. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding Aztlan is its exact location. Some scholars believe it could be somewhere in the United States, but nobody has found it. The question remains, where did the Aztec come from? Where do you think archaeologists might find the ruins of Aztlan, if it existed at all? The mysterious Longyou Caves. Imagine a vast network of underground chambers shrouded in secrecy. This place is even more mysterious than the pyramids of Giza and Stonehenge. The Longyou Caves in China defy explanation. Their creators, purpose, and even age remains a complete mystery. Are they the work of a lost civilization with astonishing technology, or something else entirely? There are 24 artificial caves carved into the hard sandstone of Fenghuang Hill, and nobody knows where they came from. The discovery of these caves is more mystifying than any other archaeological find in the country, and China has a lot of history. Let's start with the discovery. The fun part is that the caves were found, like all great things are, by accident. Local farmers were draining some ponds on their property in 1992 when they found an enormous cavern. Over the following days, they found 4 more caverns, and then 19 more caverns. The farmers were shocked that these things had been hidden under their fields the whole time. The caverns weren't just simple rough caves. That wouldn't be that exciting. They weren't just primitive niches carved into the rock either, like you may see with so many cave temples around the world. These caverns also aren't your typical underground city either. You might be thinking about Derinkuyu right now, the famous underground city found in Turkey, but the caves in China aren't like that. They are totally unique. Because of the Longyu Cave's uniqueness, scientists don't really have anything in antiquity to compare them to. They are one of a kind. There is no ancient cave, quarry, mine, or subterranean city like this anywhere else in the world. I should also mention the caverns are not connected. Each one has only a single entrance, a vertical shaft with a carved stairwell. Each entrance is designed so that it can collect rainfall and funnel it into the cavern with a sophisticated channel system. This is some pretty advanced engineering. The 5 main caves are preposterously big. Their ceilings rise more than 60 feet tall, with heavy support pillars to keep them from collapsing. The caverns are also perfectly smooth. The walls, floors, pillars, ceilings, all of them look like they've been smoothed with a high-tech laser, or at least an electric sander. When these were first found in the 90s, scientists were so in awe that they argued whether they had been created artificially. A lot of experts thought they were dealing with a natural wonder, the likes of which had never been seen before. One of the reasons for this confusion is that archaeologists haven't found a proper way to date the caves. They also haven't found very much in the way of human activity. They did recover a few clay pots on the cavern floor from about 2,000 years ago, but that doesn't mean much. People could have brought those clay pots into the caverns 10,000 years after they were built. The only thing for sure is that someone, or something, hollowed out the Longyu caves. Nobody knows who, and nobody knows why. Do you have any theories? Let me know in the comments below. The antediluvian people of the world. Scientists recently translated an ancient stone tablet that was recovered from a temple built roughly 11,000 or 12,000 years ago. They believe the inscription on the tablet confirms there was an apocalyptic disaster in 11,000 BC. The disaster spelled the end of an unknown civilization. The temple is one you might be familiar with. It's Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is believed to have been an observatory or a temple for worship, or maybe both. It's approximately 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It's also home to a series of shattered pillars and broken monoliths. One of those pillars is the Vulture Stone. When scientists recreated the images carved into the stone, they were aghast. What they saw was a meteor shower. Someone had carved comet fragments falling from the sky and crashing into the earth. The stone also has the image of a headless man on it, which scientists say is a symbol for death and disaster. It's important to understand that whoever built Göbekli Tepe is long gone. No expert has been able to discover their name or where they came from. Some think the builders were nomads. Then again, nomads don't typically build megalithic monuments, do they? They don't build temples, carve pillars, or inscribe images of cosmic disasters. There was a civilization responsible for building this ancient place. It's just not clear who they were or what happened to them. Based on the Vulture Stone, they witnessed a meteorite explode in the sky and rain fire onto the planet. Perhaps the event obliterated what had been a thriving antediluvian people. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And now for number 10. But first, it's shout-out time. I want to give a huge thank you to Clover Green and Xanatosh for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about lost civilizations, Dyson spheres, and alien civilizations. A new study suggests that human beings may have finally found evidence of alien civilizations. Only these civilizations aren't on our planet. They aren't buried under the ice of Antarctica or hidden inside a hollow pocket within the Earth. These previously unknown civilizations are lurking in a galaxy far, far away. It might sound like science fiction, but it's 100% reality. Scientists have found unusual starlight patterns in the deep universe that could be evidence of hulking, energy-producing structures known as Dyson spheres. You thought you were getting ancient history, and now you're getting science fiction. A Dyson sphere is a theoretical device proposed by Freeman Dyson in 1960. I'm thinking this wasn't the inventor of the Dyson vacuum cleaners, but let me know. Freeman said that a sophisticated enough civilization would be able to harness the very power of its host star. The how of it is straight out of Star Trek. According to Freeman, the hypothetical advanced civilization would create a cocoon around their star to harness a massive percentage of its released energy. It would be like a huge cage sucking the star dry to power an intergalactic empire. Think about how much energy a solar panel on your roof can gather on a really sunny day. Now multiply that by infinity. A Dyson sphere is like a million bajillion solar panels hooked up to the sun itself. For the first time ever, scientists think they may have found real evidence that there are Dyson spheres hooked up to stars. PhD student Matthias Suaso at Uppsala University led a study to find these mythical structures. Matthias's team developed a comprehensive method for locating indirect signatures of what they've called astroengineering. In other words, construction projects in space. There was another study conducted at the same time in Italy. The one in Italy identified 53 stars producing unusual infrared signatures. Matthias's team also identified stars producing unusual infrared signatures. The signatures suggest the stars are producing excess radiation, which is consistent with what they believe would be produced by a Dyson sphere. None of the scientists can confirm 100% that there is a civilization in the universe sucking energy out of stars, but there are anomalies that seem to corroborate the theory. Maybe these distant star dwellers are the Anunnaki gone from Earth to mess around in other cosmic neighborhoods. What do you think? The ignored sunken kingdom. Off the coast of India, researchers discovered evidence of a previously unknown civilization dating back 9,500 years. What they found could change history as we know it. By the end of this video, you might be questioning your own reality. The city off the coast of India was vast, stretching an incredible 5 miles in one direction. Unfortunately, none of the buildings are left standing. The whole place is in ruins. Loose rubble scattered across the Gulf of Combat at a depth of 120 feet. The ruins were discovered in December of 2000 by the National Institute of Ocean Technology. What I find oddly suspicious, and you might agree with me here, is that scientists have mostly ignored it for the last 20 years. It was a legitimate team of scientists who identified the ruins. They made the announcement public, the world learned about it, and then the whole thing was just kind of swept under the rug. The initial discovery was made totally by chance. The scientists were performing a routine pollution survey. As they scanned the seafloor with their sonar technology, the scans started picking up unusual geometric structures. It looked like they were floating above the ruins of a Tetris game gone wrong. When divers went down to the site, they found more than just potential ruins. They found real artifacts, including things like pottery, sculptures, human bones, and broken walls. Sometimes researchers think they found a city, but it just turned out to be rock formations. This was not one of those times. Then, when scientists did radiocarbon dating, everything took an unexpected turn. The human bones proved to be almost 10,000 years old. When the discovery was announced in May of 2001, India's Science and Technology Minister was Murli Manohar Joshi. He said the ruins belonged to an ancient civilization, one even older than the Indus Valley civilization of the Bronze Age. You'll hear more about them later today. This was a shocking thing to have been announced by a country's science minister. 2001 was a crazy year. The sunken city was ramping up to have huge repercussions for the world of history. Some historians got on the bandwagon right away, like Bandrinaryan. Yes, he has the exact same first and last name. Bandrinaryan was a renowned geologist who wrote a paper in the scientific journal Archaeology Online. His paper suggested the sunken city proved the earliest Indian cultures were descendants of a more advanced mother culture that flourished at the end of the Ice Age. The culture was then submerged by uncontrollable rising sea levels. Badrinaryan claimed this happened before recorded history even started. With all the hubbub, why don't you hear about this sunken city anymore? I don't have a good answer for you on that one. The evidence is as compelling as it gets. Even though there were skeptics, nobody was able to come up with reliable counter-evidence. On all accounts, the city is just as ancient as everybody says. All the same, the city has been mostly ignored for more than 20 years. What do you think is going on here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The lost people of the Canary Islands. Archaeologists in the Canary Islands have made a grim discovery. Grim, gruesome, and historically terrifying. They uncovered a tomb filled with corpses from a civilization that is currently extinct. The tomb contained 72 skeletons. 62 of the skeletons belonged to adults. The other 10 belonged to newborn infants. The tomb was also less of a stone-encased tomb like you find in Egypt or Rome. It was more of a cave. In fact, the skeletons were only found thanks to an amateur archaeologist flying his drone into the cave's entrance. This cave of horrors is in Gran Canaria, one of the hottest tourist destinations in Europe. I'm going to tell you something now that most tourists who visit the island are completely oblivious to. The skeletons have been linked to the very mysterious Guanche civilization. They were the original inhabitants of all the Canary Islands. The Guanche lived a life of island bliss up until the Spanish conquest saw them destroyed. People knew about the Guanche ever since the days of the Romans. Even the ancient Phoenicians knew there was a strange culture living on the Canary Islands far beyond their shores. The modern European discovery of the Canary Islands is attributed to Lanzarotto Malocello of Genoa in 1310. He built a fort on the island, and from there things took a violent turn. In the 15th century, the Spanish started colonizing the islands. The Guanches were not happy about being brutally suppressed and having their culture taken from them. By the end of the 17th century, this was no longer an issue. The Guanche society, culture, and people were gone. They had been destroyed by war, enslaved by the Spanish, and assimilated through intermarriage. Nowadays, they are gone, just ghosts with only bits and pieces of their history spread across the Canary Islands. The discovery of these 72 skeletons is a grim reminder of what happens when Spain wants your land. It's also a reminder of the Guanche mystery. Because they disappeared so long ago, there is a lot that historians don't know about them. For example, how did they arrive on the Canary Islands in the first place? Modern scholars think they may have migrated from North Africa. There is even genetic evidence that the Guanche were originally Berbers. Here's a bonus piece of history for you. You may have heard the term Berber before, but do you know what it means? A Berber is someone from North Africa who isn't of Arabic ethnicity. They describe themselves as Amazigh. Only outsiders use the term Berber. In their language, Amazigh means the free. These ancient desert dwellers were the free folk of North Africa. They have been around for at least 7,000 years, and in many places are still living the same nomadic lifestyle as their ancient ancestors. If the Guanche really were Berber, it means at some point the desert dwellers must have gotten on ships and sought out new lands. The little-known Kiladi civilization. In India, scientists have found evidence of a very mysterious civilization, one that is connected to another, even more mysterious civilization. What they found was only a knife, a primitive blade crafted 2,500 years ago. But the implications of this ancient artifact are immense. The blade was found in the village of Kontagai, located in the south. The blade is in pretty bad shape and not particularly sharp anymore. The rusted iron dagger had been buried with a skeleton and a burial urn. It appears to have belonged to someone from the Kiladi civilization. It isn't the only thing archaeologists found during their excavation of the village. Scientists with the Tamil Nadu Department of Archaeology found a total of 25 burial urns. Some were filled with bones, and others contained weapons. The scientists believe the village of Kontagai was used as a burial site in ancient times. The whole village might have been built on the graves of forgotten warriors. Archaeologists also found ancient clay floors, brick walls, the bones of cows and goats, and evidence of agricultural activity. There was definitely a civilization here, one that enjoyed playing board games. You're not the only one who likes a good game of Monopoly or chess. Artifacts found at the site show that the Kiladi civilization created their own board games for entertainment. Now it's time for the big question. Who in the world were these people? They seem to have just appeared in southern India around 500 BC. They began building urbanized centers and farming the lands. Some believe they were an offshoot of another, much more famous civilization. In northern India, closer to the lands of Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley civilization arose around 2500 BC. That was 2,000 years before the Kiladi. Very little is known about them other than that they were highly urbanized and technologically sophisticated. They were just as advanced as the Mesopotamians, but then they crumbled. Scientists have never been able to figure out what happened to the Indus Valley. They suddenly abandoned their cities, fleeing into the wilderness as if evaded by demons. The Kiladi may have even been created by the remnants of the Indus Valley civilization after they disappeared. It's possible that following the collapse of the Indus Valley, the survivors fled south and formed a new society. They changed their name, their phone number, and began a new life in a new place. Life in the deep Amazon. Lost cities have been found in the Amazon. At the beginning of this year, 2024, archaeologists used 3D laser mapping to identify the ruins of temples, palaces, neighborhoods, streets, all the stuff you expect to see in a city. The thing that makes this discovery so exciting is that it was made in the middle of the Amazon. The Amazon is supposed to be a place where, according to scientists for the last few centuries, nobody but primitive tribe people have lived. We've all seen images of the uncontacted Amazonian tribes. Scientists thought nobody but those tribes ever lived in the deep jungle. They definitely did not anticipate finding megacities. But that's exactly what there was. Megacities. This new discovery has revealed architecture just as complicated as anything built by the Maya, yet nowhere near the Maya. This was thousands of miles away in the green jungles of Ecuador. These traces of civilization were initially found by Stephen Rothstein about 20 years ago. Stephen suspected there had been a complex society living in the jungle, but he had never dreamed it was an urban agrarian civilization. He would never have known if not for the invention of laser mapping technology. After 2 decades of wondering, Stephen was able to bombard the jungle with lasers. The lasers created a 3-dimensional map. On that map were more than 6,000 earthen platforms. The earthen platforms are the remnants of cities and their structures, all of them connected by roads, with those roads running alongside massive agricultural landscapes. If you've ever driven through the prairies, you'll know what I'm talking about. Long roads moving alongside farms, connecting small cities, hubs of commerce, and little communities. This was what the Amazon looked like roughly 2,500 years ago. How many people lived here is still up for debate, but it was a lot. Stephen thinks the cities were built by an enigmatic group of people known as the Upano, starting in 500 BC. The Upano continued to prosper in the Ecuadorian jungle up until around 600 AD. Their rule lasted for just over 1,000 years. Then, for unknown reasons, they vanished. I want to give you an idea of just how big the civilization was. One of the bigger settlements has been named Quilamope. Researchers said its core area is just as big as Teotihuacan's main avenue in Mexico or the Giza Plateau in Egypt. These were legit cities, only they wouldn't have looked like any ancient city you might be familiar with. Because they were in the Amazon, they were garden cities. Food was grown on the side of your house from vines. There was farmland, yes, but there was also food sprouting from the jungle. How would you feel about having bananas growing close enough to your house that you could just reach out of your window and grab one? Sounds delicious to me. The ancient realm below the seas. Atlantis has been discovered. Scientists have found the real-life version of Atlantis off the coast of Australia. At the bottom of the sea is evidence of a civilization that thrived 18,000 years ago. This story is nothing short of amazing. Of course, this isn't the Atlantis you've been hearing about all your life. It's not the one described by the Greek philosopher Plato. This is reality. Proof of human activity lies spread across the northwest shelf of Australia in the form of sunken stone tools. I need to go back in time a little bit. Long before modern civilization, there was a paleocontinent called Sahul. This ancient landmass consisted of Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea. Scientists have known about the ancient continent for a long time, but nobody ever thought people lived on it. It turns out the experts were wrong. Those sunken stone tools I mentioned off the coast were made by indigenous people who built settlements in areas that are now underwater. Scientists think there were 500,000 people living on the northern shelf alone, all of which is submerged. Sahul as a whole was likely home to millions of people before the Ice Age ended. What's crazy is that the researchers think the indigenous civilization reached its peak 20,000 years ago. They were hitting their stride long before the Ice Age came to an end, and mammoths still walked the earth. There's a connection here that I think you'll find astonishing. 10,000 years ago, indigenous Australians began telling tales of rising sea levels. They spoke of a flood that destroyed the world. Oral histories of this flood myth have passed down from one generation to the next for 100 centuries. The Australians made a myth of a real event. The newly discovered artifacts at the bottom of the sea prove their people lost their homes as sea levels rose. This undoubtedly happened in many other parts of the world as well. Maybe the same rising waters that destroyed Sahul also destroyed Atlantis. Following this train of thought, maybe this event was the real-life inspiration for Noah's flood.
The new Cradle of Civilization?
The Cradle of Civilization has moved from Kenya to Algeria. It's still in Africa, but now it's in the east. Scientists have found stone tools used by ancient relatives of ours 2.4 million years ago. A research team discovered 250 primitive tools and almost 300 animal bones at the prehistoric site of Ain Bosherit. This is about 200 miles from the city of Algiers. The tools were used for butchering animals. The bones archaeologists found came from creatures like crocodiles and elephants. It's thrilling to think about how old these tools are. Researcher Thomas Plummer from Queens College in New York said the bones at Ain Bosherit are the oldest evidence of butchery ever. What he meant is that nowhere else in the world is there older evidence of human-like creatures butchering animals to eat them. And I bet they ate every last piece. The bones had been pounded to remove the marrow. The stone tools are way too old to have been made by our own species, Homo sapiens. That being said, scientists are scratching their heads over who made the tools because no human remains have been found. There are no bodies, which really complicates matters. The biggest puzzle is that the tools were found in Algeria. Scientists don't know if the use of tools spread from Kenya to Algeria, or if unrelated groups of hominins started using stone tools in two different places at the same time. What are the chances of that happening? Finding a civilization with Google Earth. Archaeologists have discovered an entirely new civilization using Google Earth. Now you can spy on your neighbors, look at your childhood home, and find lost civilizations. This civilization is ancient, dating back to the earliest days of urbanized people in Central Europe. Satellite images revealed remnants of their structures across an area of 3,000 square miles. Barry Malloy is an associate professor at University College Dublin. He and his team suspected an advanced civilization prospered in Central Europe starting around 2200 BC. They believed the nameless people built great cities, then abandoned them in 1600 BC. Barry was right, sort of. He was also sort of wrong. The problem with Barry's theory was that nobody could properly look for the remnants of the alleged civilizations. Central Europe is covered in farmland, and farmers don't typically like people digging for ruins and ruining their crops. Satellite technology has been a game changer. Researchers used historical imagery from a few different sources like Google Earth and the European Space Agency. They were able to see the outlines of 100 new prehistoric sites in the Pannonian Plain. The Pannonian Plain isn't exactly a top tourist destination, so don't be expected to know the name. The region is a flatland that stretches across Serbia and Hungary. The Tisa River flows through it, bringing life to the region. The river was likely instrumental in the mystery civilization surviving here in ancient times. It turned out Barry's initial theory had been a little lopsided. There was indeed a massive civilization in Central Europe, but they didn't disappear in 1600 BC. The satellite images showed humongous megaforts connected to settlements and farms. Rather than disappear, the civilization expanded into a complicated network of small societies. Researchers think that in 2200 BC, the civilization was restricted to a handful of central hubs. These would have been fortified settlements with just a few people in each one. They were a top-down hierarchical society. Things did change by 1600 BC. The society became decentralized. They became less hierarchical as they spread out across the land, developing smaller political units to care for individual settlements. This was the dispersal of civilization. Then came disaster. By 1200 BC, the whole place was abandoned. Every last city and fort was cleared as if the plague had come to town. Researchers think the Pannonian Plain became drier and less habitable. Communities fled the heat and migrated to new areas, leaving their cities behind. The Pits of Sanxingdui. In the 1980s, archaeologists found evidence of a Chinese culture from 3,000 years ago. Up until then, nobody knew they existed. This was likely because they had been expunged from the history records. Someone very powerful didn't want the Sanxingdui culture ever to be found. The site of Sanxingdui, which the culture is named after, has become one of the most mysterious places in the world. All evidence points to a flourishing civilization with incredible technological prowess. The Sanxingdui were highly developed, with access to the best technology of their time. They had bronze tools and made things out of jade. They also had a fascinating mythos that scientists are still trying to piece together. Why would anyone ever want to erase all traces of them? The craftsmanship of these people was uncanny. They made things out of jade and bronze that other civilizations wish they could have made. During the recent excavations in 2020, archaeologists found more than 13,000 artifacts buried across a series of sacrificial pits. The pits weren't for sacrificing people, they were for sacrificing objects. Researchers found a bronze box full of treasure. The box was carved with gorgeous dragon head handles and had originally been wrapped in silk. In total, they found more than 1,000 pieces of bronzeware, more than 540 gold relics, and more than 560 jade artifacts. According to the director of the site, Ran Honglin, the most important discovery of all was a statue. It may have been a depiction of an alien god. The bronze statue depicts a bizarre man-serpent creature. It has the protruding eyes of a creepy alien, the hands and features of a man, the overall body of a snake, and the nose of a pig. Archaeologists don't know what to make of the artifact. They say it points to the Sanxingdui people having an excellent imagination. He must have believed in a world of mystical creatures and freakish monsters. Ancient alien enthusiasts believe it could be that they worshipped alien beings who looked like snake-human hybrids, or what you might call reptilian humanoids. Maybe it was their reptilian gods that had the Sanxingdui erased from history. I can't think of any other civilization that had this kind of technology and isn't mentioned anywhere in any historical records. Can you? Let us know in the comments. The original West Coasters. There is a lost ancient civilization closer to your front door than you might think. Off the coast of Washington State, evidence is being gathered of a mysterious group of people who dominated the landscape a very long time ago. When I say they dominated the landscape, I mean they ruled every inch of land along the Pacific coast from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. Researchers recently found stone tools on California's Channel Islands that prove these people existed. Scientists from the University of Oregon traveled across the Santa Barbara Channel and found enough evidence to change history. According to the archaeological team, they uncovered stone projectile points lying amid the ancient bones of seals and birds. There had clearly been hunting going on here, but when? And who were the hunters? Scientists dated the stone projectiles to 12,200 years ago. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. On the island of Santa Rosa, which is in the Channel Islands, scientists found human remains dating back 13,000 years earlier. That means that people were living on the island since at least 25,200 years ago. This has shattered everything archaeologists thought they knew about North America. It used to be that the Clovis culture was seen as the oldest culture ever to live in the Americas. They weren't as much a civilization as they were a group of ancient humans who used the same technology. For example, the Clovis people used the same fluted spear tips across North America. The artifacts found in the Channel Islands are completely different. Scientists know they were definitely not made by the Clovis, but rather a much older group of people. There isn't a name for this mystery group yet, but as far as the evidence goes, they could prove to be the earliest inhabitants of the West Coast. I have one more bombshell for you. Scientists know the Clovis people disappeared from the face of the Earth roughly 12,900 years ago. Researcher Douglas Kennett believes the Clovis culture was destroyed by a meteor shower. Douglas said the meteor shower rained chunks of space debris onto the planet, and the impact may have hastened the melting of the North American ice sheet. Could it be the same meteor shower depicted on the vulture stone of Göbekli Tepe? Let me know your thoughts. Who really built the pyramids? What if I told you the Egyptians didn't build the pyramids? That got your attention. Now, this is a shocking claim, so take it with a grain of salt. But historians have recently started to doubt whether the ancient Egyptians really built the Great Pyramids of Giza. Instead, it's looking like the greatest monuments this world has ever seen may have been built by a lost civilization, possibly of alien origin. According to mainstream science, the pyramids of Giza were built around 2500 BC as funerary monuments for dead pharaohs. But historians Jerry Cannon and Malcolm Hutton have offered an alternative theory. They say the pyramids could actually be 12,000 years old. According to their research, all three pyramids and the Sphinx were built before Egyptians even lived in Egypt. In fact, they were built before the Ice Age ended, at a time when there were still creatures like woolly mammoths roaming around. If it wasn't the Egyptians, who was it? Jerry suggested the people who built the pyramids were part of the ancient civilization of Atlantis. But here's the part that's going to rock your world. The theory is that the people of Atlantis came to planet Earth from the stars tens of thousands of years ago. This would be a great sci-fi novel, right? Star travelers established civilization on our world, built great monuments like the pyramids, and then were destroyed by a flood. That would be Noah's flood, the same one spoken of in mythologies across the globe. When the floodwaters receded, only fragments of the original civilization were left. Those fragments went on to begin civilization anew, starting in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt. In that regard, many of our earliest ancestors would have been from Atlantis. It's insane to say this out loud, but there could be some truth to it. For example, did you know there is a direct line from the pyramids in Egypt to a submerged continent off the coast? The pyramids lead directly to a pair of undersea summits that look like the tips of pyramids. There have been suggestions that these are lost underwater pyramids from the days of Atlantis. In a recent interview, Jerry Cannon went on to say that the three smaller pyramids at Giza were likely built by the Egyptians, but probably because they were mimicking the three much larger pyramids left behind by their ancient ancestors. Don't try to talk to any Egyptologist about this because they don't want to hear it. Egyptian authorities have maintained that the Egyptians built the pyramids, and that's the end of the story. Jerry said, "The Egyptians have their blinkers on and are against anyone that says anything different." What do you think about this theory? Fun, right? The flying machines of the gods. There are many accounts of ancient gods and their flying machines, and there are even passages in the Bible that talk about flying machines, like this one here, 2 Kings 2:11. It says, "There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven." Whether you are religious or not, that passage sounds suspiciously like Elijah was sucked up into a vortex that was beamed down from an alien ship. At least that's what ancient alien enthusiasts have to say about it. How would you describe an alien spaceship if you lived during the Old Testament days? You didn't know about aliens or rockets. You would have most likely described it as a chariot of fire. You could excuse this weird passage if it only happened once. But listen to this excerpt from the book of Exodus 13:21. "And Jehovah was going before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them in the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give light to them." This one sounds like God was driving a pillar-shaped vehicle through the sky, which glowed like a flaming pillar in the night. Could the God in the Bible have been an alien in a spaceship? Passages like these appear so often, it's no wonder people are talking about the possibilities. It's very confusing. The argument is that maybe God really is an alien from an ancient civilization. Aliens are here now. What if there was an ancient civilization on this planet before human beings, and what if they haven't left yet? In a new paper that has shocked the scientific community, a team of researchers from Harvard and Montana Technological University have said just that. They have blown the lid off of what might just be the craziest conspiracy out there right now. The team of researchers said there could be intelligent beings concealed in stealth here on Earth, hiding in one of three possible places. Either they are underground, on the moon, or disguised as human beings. The authors of this scientific paper have called these secret alien interlopers crypoterrestrials. That's not even a real word. The scientists admitted that their hypothesis is a little strange. They said even if scientists are skeptical, they should look at their research with genuine consideration. So let's do that. Let's take a deeper look at the research. The Harvard scientists' most insistent claim is that the aliens living among us are remnants of an ancient civilization, one that isn't alien at all, but human. They've suggested a highly advanced human civilization already dominated the planet, but they messed up somehow, and now there are only a handful of them left. They observe us in secret, clutching what little remains of their advanced technology. They've got all of the world in some weird Truman Show, watching us from secret bases. Another of their ideas is that the alien species is alien to us, but not to Earth. They have suggested an intelligent species evolved independently from humans millions of years ago. They have called them intelligent dinosaurs, suggesting a race of reptilian beings are hiding under our very feet. Another option they outlined in their paper is that the hidden occupants are indeed aliens from another planet, maybe even from another time. Last, but certainly not the least believable, scientists said that maybe the creatures are not human or alien. Instead, they might be magical, something more similar to angels than living organic beings. Okay, maybe that is the least believable. The scientists didn't just make all of this stuff up and put it in the scientific paper. They did use real data and quoted actual sources. For example, the paper used quotes from former House Representative Mike Gallagher. Mike recently said that UFO sightings might be technology from an ancient civilization that is suddenly showing itself. And that's from a real representative of the House. Plus, remember that aliens already landed in Las Vegas in 2023 and nobody even batted an eye. The Kenmore family called 911 on April 30th, 2023 and reported something not human in their backyard. Several officers had already spotted a mysterious flashing light in the sky that same night. Experts have confirmed the Las Vegas family's alien encounter video is original. What do you think? Are aliens among us? The non-human megaliths of Siberia. Giants may have lived in Siberia, and I might just have the proof to back it up. There are a series of Siberian megaliths so unbelievable that it's hard to separate fact from fiction. They are called the Gornaya Shoria megaliths, looking like the remains of a humongous fortress wall that was built eons ago. The megaliths can be found at Mountain Shoria in Russia's Kemerovo Oblast. Talking about these megaliths just doesn't do them justice. You have to see them for yourself. You have to look at the perfectly molded stone blocks with your own two eyes, and that way you can see how manufactured they look. The rectangular blocks look like they could have been embedded in the Great Wall of China or in an ancient wall in Peru somewhere. The megaliths look uncannily like the ruins of some ancient piece of architecture. The rocks were identified in the 1990s as natural formations. Scientists have proposed that the megaliths were made by normal geological processes. Things like wind and rain just so happen to shape natural stone into megalith-sized blocks with joints between them. There is no information on how old the megaliths are, nor have there been other ruins found nearby. The megaliths could be tens of thousands of years old or even older. There is just no way to know for certain, and scientists don't seem that interested in finding out. And now for number 8, but first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a huge thank you to Mildred LaWare and Cameron Movahead for supporting this channel. You guys are awesome! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Lost World of Noah. Have you ever wondered what the world looked like before the flood? Let's take a minute to inspect the Bible and see what it says the world was like during antediluvian times. The world was a very different place. There were no snowy Alps or Rocky Mountains or Himalayas. The Mississippi River didn't flow to the Gulf of Mexico, and there was no sweltering hot Amazon jungle. Everything was different. You can get a glimpse of this world for yourself simply by reading the book of Genesis. The Bible says that on day 3 of God's first work week, he gathered the waters together in one place, separate from dry land. On the land, he created a leavened place called Eden. From Eden, 4 great rivers flowed. What exactly does this mean, though? It seems to suggest that before the flood, there was only one continent. Noah may have stood on some hills overlooking San Francisco, but instead of the San Francisco Bay, he was looking at a chunk of Australia or Antarctica. Creationist Christians believe that before Noah's flood, there was a single supercontinent called Rodinia. It was on this continent that the original civilization created by God lived. When I say original civilization, I mean the one that the flood destroyed. Those would be the ancestors of Noah and the descendants of Adam, along with the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and all the other characters from biblical books like the Book of Enoch. But that's a story for another day. For now, I want to focus on the antediluvian landscape. Creationists believe the flood was so violent and so powerful it shattered Rodinia. The shattered pieces bumped into one another hard enough to create mountains. When everything settled down, much of the original supercontinent was submerged. It's been suggested that our modern continents are only made up of small pieces of the original Earth puzzle. Many of the places where the pre-flood civilization lived are covered in mud at the bottom of the sea. The Winged Genies. The Winged Genie is an ancient motif from Assyria that you've most likely seen without knowing what you were looking at. You'll never guess the insane meaning behind these ancient creatures, if creatures is even the right word. This is a Winged Genie. This particular Winged Genie was carved in 870 BC. Here's another one with 4 wings, holding a pine cone in one hand and a bucket in the other. It was found on the north wall of King Sargon II's palace in Dur-Sharrukin, circa 713 BC. When you see these images online, they are almost always connected with the Anunnaki. Type in Anunnaki into a search engine, and a Winged Genie is likely the first thing that will pop up. The truth isn't as simple. Winged genies are typically bearded men with bird wings. They were popular in Assyrian artwork, especially in palaces and the homes of royalty. Sometimes the genie can be seen wearing a horned helmet, and sometimes they wear what look like jeweled bracelets or watches. It's believed the Winged Genie was most closely associated with the ancient Anunnaki god Enki, Lord of Water. Enki was like the proto-version of Poseidon. Historically, Anunnaki were deities from Mesopotamia, worshipped by the cultures of the Akkadians, Assyrians, Sumerians, and Babylonians. It was like the pantheon of gods on Mount Olympus to the Greeks. Each civilization saw the Anunnaki a little differently. In Akkad, the Anunnaki were the descendants of An and Ki. Get it? Anunnaki? They were the oldest primordial gods. Their whole function was to determine the fates of humanity. In the Old Babylonian period between 1830 and 1530 BC, a new group of deities emerged. They were called the Igigi, believed to be the 6th generation of gods. One of the similarities across the ancient cultures of Mesopotamia was that they saw the Anunnaki as real living beings. They weren't mythical entities living in a shadow realm. They were physical gods on Earth. Each generation bred new gods. The Igigi came along and were supposed to perform menial labor tasks for the primary Anunnaki, but they didn't want to. And after 40 days, they rebelled against the god Enki, the Winged Genie. This is all according to ancient myth. When the Igigi rebelled against Enki, that was when the Anunnaki created human beings as their slaves. Breeding gods was too dangerous, with the gods being too unruly and hard to control. The Anunnaki needed a better workforce, so they made people. The ancient stories of Winged Genie, Anunnaki, and biologically engineered human slaves point to the possibility of civilization before humanity. If the myths are to be believed, the Anunnaki used Homo erectus and in vitro fertilization to create modern humans to mine their precious metals. But is this the true myth, or is this sci-fi? A lot of this has been blended together in modern times thanks to writers like Zecharia Sitchin and David Icke. It's been said that when the Ice Age ended and the world flooded, the Anunnaki bases on Earth were destroyed. Only then were humans able to rise up against them, destroy the God Kings, and start their own civilization. What do you think? Are you a fan of this Anunnaki myth sci-fi world? Let me know in the comments. The Secrets of Tiwanaku. Tiwanaku might be an antediluvian city, a real one built before the start of human civilization as we know it. If this can be proven, history will be forever changed. If you haven't heard of Tiwanaku before, you're in for a treat. This ancient city was at the center of almost every major civilization in Bolivia, Peru, and Chile. Its remains can be found near the edge of Lake Titicaca. These days, some of the most unexplainable ruins are located near Tiwanaku. Places like Pumapunku, the Gate of the Sun, the Acapana Pyramid, the Temple of Kalasaysaya, all archaeological sites that defy logical explanation. Tiwanaku translates in the ancient language of the Tiwanaku culture as City of God. Let me make it clear how old Tiwanaku is. When the Inca came to power roughly 5 centuries ago, the city was already legendary. The original civilization that built the city had been gone for thousands of years. The Inca viewed the extinct Tiwanaku culture like we view the ancient Egyptians today. What happened to Tiwanaku was hugely mysterious. Archaeologists have never been able to fully understand why the city was destroyed or when, but they have found evidence of a cataclysm. Buildings have been discovered torn to shreds, as if blown apart by missiles. Streets and temples have been found fragmented and buried under thick layers of mud. When I say thick, I mean more than 60 feet thick. This all happened in ancient times. How ancient is the million-dollar question? Tiwanaku was slowly rebuilt after its destruction, becoming a village at the edge of Lake Titicaca. But then it was abandoned abruptly and for unknown reasons in 1000 AD. Some consider Tiwanaku the oldest city in the world, even older than the ruins of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. This isn't confirmed, it's only suspected. One of the first experts to put forward the theory was renowned archaeologist Arthur Poznański. Arthur was a prolific writer, researcher, and explorer. In 1896, he moved to South America at the young age of 23. He explored the far reaches of the Amazon River, ended up moving to Bolivia, and became obsessed with Tiwanaku. In the 1940s, Arthur began to make claims that Tiwanaku was built prior to the flood. He thought construction of the ancient city began when the Ice Age was still in full swing. Arthur was so convinced of his theory that he published a book in 1945 claiming that Tiwanaku was 17,000 years old. He also claimed it was not built by the ancestors of modern people living in the region known as the Aymara. Instead, Arthur believed Tiwanaku was built by an origin civilization. It was from the towering stone walls of Tiwanaku that Arthur believed all the civilizations of the Americas began, including the Maya and the Aztec. Later scholars and scientists rejected Arthur's ideas. But what makes living scientists so sure they are the ones who are right? Arthur didn't make his claims based on nothing. He spent 40 years excavating Tiwanaku, studying every brick and astronomical alignment to learn more of how they viewed the cosmos. All of Arthur's studies pointed to one explanation. Tiwanaku was built by a prehistoric culture with an incredible understanding of celestial bodies, architecture, and time itself. Egypt's antediluvian temple. Tiwanaku might be one of the oldest cities ever built, but the Egyptian city of Abydos is without a doubt, archaeologically confirmed, one of the earliest cities in Egypt, and it's home to a place of immense power. By about 7,400 years ago, Abydos was a thriving settlement. By 3400 BC, the pre-dynastic rulers of Abydos were building shrines and mortuaries. Fast forward to the 13th century BC, Pharaoh Seti I constructed a massive temple with floor-to-ceiling friezes and beautiful murals. Only Seti I may not have been the first one to build a temple at the exact spot where his temple currently stands. The temple, known as the Osirion, might be way, way older. Some think a temple has been standing in this part of the Egyptian desert since antediluvian times. It's been reused and renovated by civilization after civilization. In other words, the Osirion is a place of power, a place that radiates such intense energy that people continuously use it as somewhere special, like a temple or a church. To understand this antediluvian hypothesis, let's take a look back in time. 12,000 years ago, North Africa didn't look anything like what it does now. Egypt itself was unrecognizable. It was wetter, greener, and there was an inland sea that drained into the Atlantic. All that lush greenery was annihilated almost instantly when Noah's flood struck. Ancient historian Diodorus of Sicily wrote that it disappeared from sight in the course of an earthquake, when those parts of it which lay toward the ocean were torn asunder. The green paradise of Egypt was swallowed, and all that was left behind was a desert. If there really was a cataclysmic event that changed Egypt so rapidly, it's safe to say that many of the original buildings were lost. Maybe there were thousands of temples that were washed away in the flood and have never been found. This could explain why it's been alleged that there is water damage to the Sphinx. The Sphinx could have narrowly avoided being washed away with the rest of pre-Pharaoh Egypt. The Osirion is built of gigantic rose granite pillars. The pillars are unique for two main reasons. One reason is that they are completely devoid of carvings and inscriptions. Unlike most blocks in Egyptian temples that are covered in hieroglyphs, the Osirion is as bare as a white padded cell. The other reason for its uniqueness is that it shouldn't technically exist. Some of the pillars weigh up to 100 tons. I don't think I need to explain to you that 100 tons is 1 ton too many. There is no realistic way the ancient Egyptians transported such big granite pillars to Abydos in the desert from Aswan near the border of Nubia. The ancient temple also has stylistic differences. Although it is clearly an Egyptian temple, it doesn't fit into the thematic scheme of other Egyptian temples from the reign of Seti II. It's completely unique, lending credibility to the theory that it predates Egypt. But if it predates Egypt, and if it was only repurposed by Seti rather than built from scratch, what originally stood here? And who built it in the first place? Evidence of Noah's biblical flood. There might just be proof of a pre-flood civilization hidden underwater, just like the creationist Christians say. I have information from one of the most renowned underwater archaeologists in the world to back it up. His name is Robert Ballard. More than 10 years ago, Robert and his team were scanning the depths of the Black Sea in search of lost civilizations. They were hoping to find evidence of humans who were alive at the same time as Noah. Dive around and find out. Lo and behold, they found what they were looking for. Robert already had an excellent track record when it came to finding the impossible. His name might sound familiar because Robert Ballard was the one who found the Titanic in 1985 at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. In 2012, he had even more sophisticated technology. He used that advanced tech to find biblical evidence of a global catastrophe. As you may know already, the Ice Age was a real thing. Watch any of the Ice Age movies and you'll know it for a fact. If you lived in Connecticut 12,000 years ago, the ice would have been a mile above your head. There was an ice cube that stretched from Connecticut to the North Pole, a very big ice cube. As it started to melt, the world started to flood. Water from the melting glaciers rushed toward the oceans, causing flooding around the world. There is no debating that this would have been the mother of all floods. While scientists generally agree it happened, finding irrefutable evidence has been tough. That was what drew Robert to the Black Sea region. He was also drawn by a rumor. A controversial theory was proposed by a pair of Columbia University scientists. The theory stated that the Black Sea was initially a small freshwater lake surrounded by prehistoric farms. These were farms that may have belonged to a civilization 7,000 years older than the Egyptians, or maybe 27,000 years older. There's no way of knowing. At the end of the Ice Age, a surge of water more than 200 times stronger than Niagara Falls swept over those farms, destroying everything. The civilization was wiped out, and the small lake turned into an epic sea. This was the theory that Robert really wanted to prove. 400 feet beneath the surface, Robert found that proof.
He and his team uncovered evidence of an apocalyptic-level event. They found an ancient shoreline with shells scattered along it. The shoreline had been battered by a violent flood. Based on the radiocarbon dating of the shells, that flood happened 7,000 years ago. Unfortunately, Robert didn't find any physical ruins. No castles or palaces or cities were discovered buried under the muck. He only found a submerged shoreline from a time when the Black Sea was a small lake. Robert wasn't able to prove a pre-flood civilization existed, but he definitely proved there was a massive flood, just like the Bible says. The Great Wall of Texas. I can't think of a more aptly named American city than Rockwall, Texas. Underneath the city is an actual rock wall, one that has been a source of speculation and controversy for the last 160 years. The American people demand answers. Was Rockwall's rock wall built by prehistoric people, or is it natural? Was Texas home to a civilization before humans? There have been roughly 12 discoveries of the rock wall underneath the town. What I mean is that people have found fragments of the ancient structure on about a dozen different documented occasions. The Rockwall County Historical Foundation has been keeping track of the discoveries, with the first one recorded in 1852. To this day, the entire stretch of the wall has never been excavated. Even the places where fragments would have been found don't seem to form any pattern. When looking at the spots on a map, they are just random dots and dashes. People have mostly found the wall by accident, when plowing a field or digging a new well. People have had better luck finding fragments of wall without looking than those who have actively excavated. Okay, but what is it? In 1901, Dr. Robert T. Hill argued that the wall is nothing but a sandstone dike. Geologist Dr. John Gleesman at the University of Texas more recently studied the formation and agreed with the initial assessment. The Colorado Geological Survey agrees as well. They said the wall was formed by a seam of sedimentary material, stuff like sand and silt collected in a fissure over millions of years, then dried to look like an artificial wall. These experts did admit that the formations in Rockwall are unique, specifically because when the materials dried and fractured, it did so in a way that made the wall look as if it were put together symmetrically using bricks. Have you ever seen this before? If you've been to Rockwall, Texas, you absolutely must let me know in the comments. I want to hear your observations. Not everyone is convinced with the explanation given by modern scientists. There are some pretty suspect things here to make you scratch your head. Here's something that's very suspicious. There have been bits of iron, a small metal disc, and other out-of-place artifacts found during excavations of wall sections. These unidentified relics point to the wall being made by human hands. Or someone's hands, at least. Atlantis in Indonesia. Atlantis is not where you might expect. A group of researchers from Indonesia recently claimed that they found proof Atlantis sank into the Java Sea of Southeast Asia. They supposedly know the exact location of the city. It's 200 miles from the southern coast of Java. So, if Atlantis is found, why aren't more scientists talking about it? The way the team reached their conclusion wasn't as scientific as you might hope. The group calls themselves Turanga Seta. They found Atlantis by looking at old myths, geological anomalies, and other clues of that nature. The founder of the group is Timmy Hartadi, a guy who has earned himself the nickname the Indonesian Indiana Jones. Vice correspondents traveled to Timmy's home in Yogyakarta to learn more about his mysterious group and their discovery of Atlantis. Timmy revealed that the group began when some like-minded people felt unsatisfied with the version of history they were taught in school. They believe that there is more to history than the books are telling us. In 2011, Timmy and his group claimed that they identified a pyramid hidden inside Indonesia's Mount Laocoon. The government immediately rejected their findings, and the Indonesian Scientific Institute released a statement distancing themselves from Turanga Seta. Timmy was even denounced by the National Archaeological Board as a pseudoscientist. That didn't stop him from doing his research. Timmy still maintains that the pyramid in Mount Laocoon is almost 1,000 feet tall, more than twice as tall as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Timmy said the pyramid is one of many sites in Indonesia where there is more than meets the eye. If Timmy and his team are to be believed, Indonesia was home to an ancient society that predates every known civilization. Their monuments are buried underneath volcanoes and mountains.
Atlantis itself is just off the coast of Java. As exciting as this all is, and I kind of like the idea just for fun, Timmy hasn't produced any reliable evidence. If he could just come up with some artifacts or some images of underwater ruins, he might change history. The Antediluvian Kings. The people who lived on Earth before modern humans lived for nearly 1,000 years each. How did they do it? And were they even human? In the opening chapters of the book of Genesis, there is information about the ages of all the biblical patriarchs who lived during antediluvian times. The 10 patriarchs of Genesis lived for a combined total of 8,575 years. The average age of somebody living before the flood was 858 years. Don't you wonder what people did to fill the time? It's one thing to live for 800 years with the internet. The Bible is not the only place where you see evidence of an ancient civilization that lived seemingly forever. The Sumerian king list is something I've talked about a few times, but it never gets old. This ancient document from Mesopotamia contains the names of 8 mythical kings who ruled the world for 241,200 years. The average reign of a Sumerian god king was 30,150 years. Although the Sumerian god kings had more impressive lives than the biblical patriarchs, you can still see parallels between the two mythologies. They both lived for ages. The Sumerian king list predates the Bible by a lot. It was discovered in Larsa, Iraq, and is 4,000 years old. What makes it so amazing is that the list contains the names of real kings who lived for reasonably long lives, less than a century. But it also has those initial god kings who ruled for an eternity. There is one part of the king list you might not know. At the very end of the list, it says that after the flood, the kings ruled from Kish. Kish was a real city founded around 3100 BC. The list is a blend of reality and fiction. But what if it isn't? What if everything on the list is true? Maybe the world really was ruled by some godlike beings. Perhaps the stories in the Bible and in ancient Sumer were based on real life. Do you think a race of god kings lived on Earth for thousands of years before human civilization started? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching! Don't forget to subscribe and stick around for an older video you might have missed.